Good afternoon. This is the JP Dinnell podcast, episode 50. I am JP Dinnell, and as always, I have Lucas with me. I'm very excited for today's guest. When I first heard his story, I was absolutely amazed by his attitude and how he handles life. Running a marathon is a task most people would not want to accomplish, let alone try or be able to. However, my buddy Rob Jones decided to run a marathon as a double above the knee amputee. He decided to run a marathon every day for 31 days in a row in 31 different cities to raise awareness that the perception of how veterans that were once viewed as being noble had changed to being broken. And Rob realized that was not the case about himself and any of his other wounded teammates and his brothers that he cared so deeply about. So he sought out to do something that had never been done before. I remember first hearing about Rob on Jocko's podcast. I knew his story. And like I said, I was inspired by it. And now I think it's absolutely awesome that we both work together at Echelon Front as leadership instructors. And I'm very thankful that Rob's here to be on our podcast. Rob, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing great. I'm honored to be here. I didn't even realize it was episode 50. That's a big deal. I'm honored.
Yeah.
That's a big number.
I know. It's awesome. We've had an episode come out every single Friday. It's been a blessing. God's blessed this podcast and the followers. We have a lot of really good engagement. I know you listen to the podcast occasionally, and man, dude, the fact that you're here and we get to record, I know Lucas and I have been looking forward to this for a while.
Yeah, I've been just looking at all my events I'm going to, just waiting for one to be in Dallas so I could text you.
And that's a legitimate statement that you just said, because you proactively reached out to me like, hey, I'm coming to Dallas on this day. I can fly in early. Would you want to record? And it happens that I'm here. I didn't have any
that's
events.
A rarity.
I know the fact that we're able to be here together is awesome. I know our jerk bosses like to keep us busy.
I know. They just want to spread leadership.
A little leadership seeds throughout the world.
How dare they want to help the entire world?
Oh, man. Hey, man, we're going to dive into as much of your story as you want. One of the things that I've always loved about you is that you're an open book. You handle life just incredibly through your attitude, your sense of humor. And one of the things I recognize, I don't think I know I have never told you this, I've always admired, is you have the right balance between your sense of humor while staying professional and being just a good human. Because there are some people that use their sense of humor, and I get it. People deal with things, different ways, but some people use their sense of humor and they cross the line. They go to the point where they're like, well, I can just kind of get away with this because of these things that happened in my life. And they use sense of humor, and it's to the point where either one, they're annoying, or two, they're inappropriate. They're not being professional. And you, from what I've experienced, have always seemed to have a really good balance of being professional, lightening the mood, having a good attitude, encouraging people, but also not buying into people's BS, which I think is really cool and I enjoy. And the fact that now we work together at Echelon Front, it's an honor for us to be able to, we've done some events together. You're a well-spoken instructor. Just because you understand something doesn't mean you can go out there and teach it and present well. Presenting is a skill set, keeping a crowd engaged is a skill set. Listening, actively listening so that you can interact and respond and tie people's questions and or situations back to what we teach at Echelon Front is a skill set.
Oh yeah.
And I think you do a great job of adding in the humor whenever it's needed, and it shows people that you are a very relatable person. So I look forward to diving into whatever you have. But Lucas, what do you got, buddy?
Man, I'm just stoked to be here with Rob. The very first time I saw Rob was at Muster 017 last year, and saw your name on the list, and then didn't realize kind of who you were, because there were so many instructors that were there. But as soon as you walked out on the stage, I was like, I've seen this guy online.
How dare you?
I know, right? I'm a little slow on the uptake most of the time. But it's being a natural blonde does that to you. But I was so excited to get to hear your story, and like JP said, you presented everything so well. And then over the course of the podcast, as I've been consistently reminded by our listeners and others, when I say things like I don't like to run, they're they just give me the gentle nudge of like, one guy in particular was like, I don't mean this offensively, but that comes off as a little weak whenever you look at guys like Rob Jones that JP works with. I was like, honesty sometimes brings out our weaknesses. So yeah.
Honesty is the only way you can bring out your weaknesses.
This is true.
All right.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
But I told him, hey, if I had mechanical legs, I'd be running all the time.
I do get that sometimes. Like, well, his legs don't hurt. I'm like, well, the legs I do have that kind of hurt sometimes.
Oh, it's got to be. So I
what an ignorant statement.
I think people are trying to be funny.
Okay, I like how you also give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm like getting like hyper protective of Rob right now. Going like, who said that? What's their Instagram?
Right? Yeah.
Where do they live?
Yep. Do you ever get the like, hey, your calves suck? Does that comment ever?
My calves are what?
Like people are like, oh, your calves are out of proportion to the rest of your body.
I mean, I say that to myself all the time. If I'm looking at me, like I look at a picture of myself from the side, and I'm like, I just look weird. Yeah. This just looks strange. No wonder people stare at me.
I do have a question about like all of your running before. I know we're going to get into your story, but I have a friend who. We've talked about him before. His name's Nate. He got into an accident, lost sight, and then lost one of his legs. He's got a Bluetooth leg that allows him to do a bunch of different athletic things.
Yeah.
So he just kind of like tells his phone what to do and what mode to put his leg in, and then it kind of does the rest for him. But he has tremendous issues trying to get, or did in the past, like trying to take care of the bottoms of his legs, the stumps, because of the way that they insert into the leg, like whether or not you've got the proper kind of padding whenever you put on your prosthesis.
Yeah.
When you were preparing for all of this stuff, like how much of that or like how much did that factor into your running, or is that something that you've had some issues or some experiences with?
Factors in heavily. I mean, I have the same legs, the legs that we have. They're called bionic knees. So I have the ones, they're the X3s is what they're called. And yeah, you can enter into. I've shown you, JP. I've shown all my different modes. There's 5 different modes you can put into it.
Right.
I've got the normal walking mode, and then I've got my push-up mode, which locks the leg out. So you can do push-ups, you can do L-sits, you can do stuff like that.
That's wild.
When I was at FTX, I was walking up a lot of steep hills and stuff, and just to stay extra stable, I put them into locked-out mode with it's nice and stable. Most of the modes I have in it are there for different exercises that I want to do in the gym, and it's all about just like bending the knee in a certain way and keeping it there because they don't. When you have them in normal walking mode, they just kind of free swing. So if I was going to try and do an L pull-up or something, I'd stick my legs out, and the legs would just kind of slowly bend. So I put them in lockout mode so they stay straight.
Right on.
But yeah, what you talk about is...
There's one more mode.
There's one more mode. Oh, beast mode?
Yes.
What is beast mode? Yeah,
like,
what is beast mode?
There's one more. Come on.
Is that when you put on your
beast mode?
Beast
mode is just... so in the app... you just look at it and you can name all the different modes. Usually people would do like push-up mode or whatever mode. And so my straight leg mode, I call it beast mode.
Nice.
Just put it in there, beast mode.
I love that. That's awesome.
But yeah, so what you're talking about is incredibly important with all amputees, and that is fit of the socket. Because think about, you can kind of think about a socket, which is the carbon fiber case that goes around my stump. You can kind of think of that like you would a shoe. If you don't have a good fitting shoe, you go for a walk, over time it's not gonna work. You're gonna get blisters, or you're gonna get hot spots on it's the same exact thing with a prosthetic socket. And so unfortunately I had to learn the hard way about how to A, make it comfortable, and B, make it so that the skin doesn't break down, because that's something that you wouldn't necessarily think about, your skin being a problem. And I knew from experience that if I spend too much time in the legs, or if they fit just barely off, if they're just a little bit twisted or whatever, then over one marathon, let alone 31, I can get blisters, I can get things rubbing, abrading. So I knew that already.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I did for that was underneath the socket, we have what's called a silicone liner, which is basically just a well, how would you go? It's
a
like a
glove?
rubber. It's like
Yeah.
it's
A glove for your nut.
a glove. Yeah, a glove for your stump. It's made out of silicone. You roll it on, and it
I know
covers
the
your stump.
analogy you wanted.
Yeah,
to
I knew you knew that I was thinking, but I didn't want to say it on the
I like how
podcast.
you're keeping it kid friendly.
Yeah.
So it's
Like something you'd roll onto a banana.
Yeah, that's exactly
In 5th grade.
Yes.
like a tube
Yeah.
sock.
So made out, a
tube
tube
sock.
sock, a silicone tube sock. And then underneath of that, I have this thing called a liner, which is basically a gray wicking sock that I
Right.
put on there. And so I cut that thing, just through experience, I cut it in a certain way so that it absorbs sweat.
Gotcha.
That's one of the things that amputees deal with, is that the leg sweats, and when it sweats, the grip of that liner slackens, so then your leg might slide off. So that was one thing that I did, and then another thing that I did to help with blisters and abrasions and that kind of thing was I took chamois cream,
Yeah.
the goop that cyclists put on their butts to protect them from their seats.
Yeah,
I
Mike
took
Mitchell
that,
uses that.
and I put that on underneath my liner. I lubricated all these different spots that I knew from experience would start to get abrased and get hot, get blisters. I put that, gooped it all over the place, and then I put the liner on over top of that, so that lubricated it. And then you put the socket on, but with sockets you have to make sure that they're snug, but they're not too snug. Too snug, and your leg will actually start to get squeezed. Yeah, did you guys ever work out with the little restriction bands? It kind of hurts, right? So if you put it on too tight, the leg gets squeezed, and that's very uncomfortable. But if it's too loose, then the socket isn't supporting your body weight appropriately, so you're actually landing on the end of your stump too hard.
Oh.
So there's this balance, and unfortunately that balance tends to change
as you run.
because when I first put the leg on, the leg is sort of expanded, and so when you put the socket on, it kind of compresses a little bit. So it's and then over time, as you run, the leg will get compressed a little bit so that it fits in the socket better. But then, as you run for longer, you dehydrate, less blood volume, so then the leg shrinks down even more. Or actually, what happens is when you start to run, the leg grows a little bit because of the increased volume of blood going into it. And then as you run more, you dehydrate, less blood volume, so you kind of have to. I would run with ply socks in my pocket, so that I know, so that as I start to feel it get a little bit uncomfortable, I can stop and I could put ply socks on. And then also, during the month of marathons at least, at the halfway point, I would take the leg off, dry it off, reapply the chamois cream. So there's a lot of maintenance.
Yeah.
It's tons and tons and tons of maintenance that goes along that I had to do to make sure I could keep going day after day after day.
What was your average time for your marathon?
So the way I would run it would be I would run 12 kilometers. I would take a 20-minute break, 12 kilometers, 20-minute break, 9.2 kilometers, 20-minute break, then the last 9 kilometers for a total of 42.2. Okay. And so total running time, my fastest one was 3 hours, 49 minutes of running time, plus 60 minutes of a break. So,
That's
4:49.
still faster than most people that
It was a 8:30 pace or something like that.
total time.
Yeah, total. Yeah, total
time.
running time. Yeah, and then most of them would be between that and 4 hours and 10, depending on the
Yeah,
temperature.
but even with the hour, that's faster than most people are doing.
I mean, yeah, that's a good. It's a decent time for first time.
That will
marathon
qualify
runner.
you for a lot of like the big marathons, and it may not qualify you for like the Boston or
wouldn't
things like
qualify you
that.
for-
But
yeah.
you would get into some of the others that would allow you to like kind of enter
Yeah,
into that.
I mean, a
and
lot of
put you on
marathons
that.
you just sign up and you get it, or you win
Yeah.
the lottery.
But that's pretty cool. And one of the reasons I asked that question is because the people who say, "Oh, it doesn't hurt whenever he runs, he doesn't get the cramps and stuff." It's like, no, he's got a lot more to do than just like change his socks about halfway through because
And there's
he's
pain.
got a little chafing.
There's pain for sure.
Yeah.
So so you're talking about like just the difference. So my dad, I know you and I have talked about this. My dad lost his left arm a little over 2 years ago. And because it's so close to his shoulder, it's hard for a prosthetic to actually to work.
Yeah.
And for him, that's so he's just gone without a prosthetic basically this whole time. And
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the case for some people is that sometimes it's just not practical to use it, and a lot of the times people try and force it and just causes frustration, and you have to just sit back and think about what is the best tool that I can. Maybe the best tool is actually going to be not having a prosthetic on there, because it can be the case. Or
that's a perspective shift that I bet a lot of amputees don't want to take on.
Yeah, I mean, it can be frustrating because you see somebody like me. I have really long stumps. I'm very extremely fortunate in how long my stumps are. I have my entire left femur and most of my right femur, so I have very long stumps, which it's an advantage for me. You want to have as long a stumps as you possibly can, and that's probably part of the reason why I can ride a bike, why I can walk around like I do, why I can run so long. Whereas if I've seen guys that have very, very short stumps, and yeah, it creates a lot of problems with the liner staying on, with the socket staying on, and yeah, it causes even more issues, to the point that sometimes it's just not viable.
Yeah. So has your mindset always been similar to what you just displayed when you said, I'm very fortunate for how long my stumps are? Because most people would be like, not thinking about being grateful for the stumps and actually being upset that they have stumps. But like, I was very, I thought it was really cool the way you just phrased that.
Since my injury, I wouldn't say that throughout my entire life that I had that kind of an attitude. Okay. Certainly not before I joined the Marine Corps, but after my injury, and the thing is, the reason I have that kind of an attitude or that kind of perspective is because I got dropped right in the middle of the physical therapy clinic at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, called the MATC, MATC, and it was the 100, 150 amputees there at any given time, a wide spectrum of capabilities and amputation levels, and I would see guys that had those extremely short stumps, and I would see the struggles that they had. I saw a couple guys double hip disarticulations, meaning the entire leg was gone.
Ooh.
And I saw those guys trying to learn how to walk. And so when I saw myself and how long of a stump I had, yeah, sure, it was short. It was shorter than the below the knee amputees, and that's a whole other thing, because having that extra joint is great. But I saw how much better it is to have a longer stump, and I looked down at mine. I was like, yeah, sure, I'm a double above knee amputee, but I could be a quadruple amputee, I could be a triple amputee, I could be blind, I could be all these other things that would be probably a lot more difficult. So,
yeah, it's a very unique mindset shift that you developed just because of your awareness, and one of the things that you and I teach at Echelon Front is the importance of doing honest self-assessments.
Yeah.
And, it's awesome that it's something that you've known to be true for years and years and years before working at Echelon Front, because of the environment that you were forced into.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't benefit you at all to lie to yourself.
Well, yes, I agree.
In the long run, it might make you feel better for a few minutes, but
tactical win, strategic loss.
You're exactly right,
my man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for just sharing that, and I would dare to say that we will definitely dive deeper back into these subjects that we talked about. But I'd like to, for our listeners, just to learn a little bit about like what made you as a kid. Like, where did you grow up? Talk about your family situation and just your journey into the Marine Corps, which is one of the most elite fighting forces that the world has ever seen.
The most. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I grew up on a horse farm. My parents divorced when I was 1, and then my mom, my sister, and I moved out to my mom's family farm when I was 1, and then my stepdad came in when I was about 10.
What state is
Virginia,
this?
Northern Virginia. Yeah, Loudoun County, Virginia.
It's gorgeous there.
Yeah, they call it horse country, wine country. It's a really nice area. And I grew up on a horse farm, and my stepdad and my mom, they had a horseback riding business. And because of that, I was forced to clean horse stalls and do all sorts of stuff that I didn't want to do, and I did not like it, and I I rebelled, as any kid is going to when you're forced to do jobs you don't want to do. I was the landscaper of the entire farm. Spent a lot of my summers weed whacking and building fences and doing all that stuff, which now, obviously, I'm thankful that I got to do. But at the time, I hated horses, hated farms, et cetera, et cetera. Rebelled in that way. Couldn't wait to go to college. I was big into sports until high school. I was always playing baseball, soccer, all sorts of sports. And then in high school, I kind of fell behind on the growth curve. I weighed 88 pounds in ninth grade, really small guy. And then I didn't make any teams in high school, so I kind of got a little bit dejected from that. And found computer games at the same time. Just pivoted completely into, was obsessed with video games. Wanted to go to college to become a video game programmer. And then I went to Virginia Tech for college with a computer science major. Unfortunately, I spent way too much time playing video games, not enough time studying, learning how to play or learning how to program video games. By my junior year, flunking basically, just I was not a good student. I tried to apply the same attitude I had in high school towards my studies that worked in high school, was perfectly fine in high school, but did not work in college. And so I tried to apply that same play video games all night, do your homework in the morning, that kind of thing. Did not work out. I was basically failing all my CS classes, not doing well. Had an existential crisis, essentially. And it was interesting because I had a buddy, my friend Matt. He had a similar situation the year before, and he had joined the Marine Corps because his dad was a Marine. I didn't know anything about the Marine Corps, but we were talking on AOL Instant Messenger back in the day.
What was that screen name?
What year was this?
This was 2005.
Oh, wow.
Mine was Perxies 2000 or something.
Nice. It was a Super Stud 2700.
That's what you, Super
yeah,
Stud?
That was me back in the day.
Okay, accurate.
Good old
accurate.
aim.
JP, what was yours?
Come on.
Humble Beast 2002.
Huskular 67.
I don't remember. I'm just laughing at the whole AOL thing. I don't know.
So anyway, we were messaging on AIM, and I was asking him what it was like, and he said it was best thing I've ever done. And I was at that point where I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I was thinking about going to film school. I was thinking about anything to get away from this impending failure that I was facing. And I figured maybe I'll go look up this Marine Corps thing, and I went on the website, and it seemed cool. And there was a bunch of guys in dress blue uniforms and shooting guns, and they looked cool. And then I went to the library, and I found this book, the first book I could find about the Marine Corps, called Brotherhood of Heroes. It's about the Battle of Peleliu in World War II. Wow. And I read it, and I thought to myself, that's what I'm missing. I'm missing brotherhood. I'm missing courage. I'm missing selflessness. That's what I need. The best way to get that is to go join the Marine Corps. So I went down to the recruiting station, went into the recruiter's office, said I wanted to join the Marine Corps. I think that next day I was down at MEPS. And then after I signed the paperwork, called my parents, and I was like, hey, I joined the Marine Corps.
Oh, my God. How did... Oh my gosh! How'd your sweet little mother react to this?
They took it about as well as you probably would expect, given that we were in Iraq in the middle of a war, 2 wars.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad just went, why? And my mom, I forget exactly what her response was, but it was probably something similar. She was probably scared to death.
Yeah, so now, I mean, do you remember what time frame in 2005 this was?
Fall of 2005, then I went to boot camp in May of 2006.
Oh, yeah, we are at the...
Yeah, you guys were just getting to Ramadi.
Yep.
That's what I say in my brief. I say, as I was getting to boot camp, Jocko and Leif were just getting to Ramadi.
Yeah.
About the same time.
Wow. I'm just trying to think from your parents' perspective, because Aiden's 18 now, and he's, trying to figure out what he wants to do next. And, we actually, one of my buddies who's he's a Marine Corps recruiter for this area, didn't put the two together, and he called Amanda to talk about Aiden joining the Marine Corps. But she didn't think about it. And he didn't think about it because his last name is Trimble.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
And so he's talking about it, and Amanda's like, is this Joe Reyna? And he was just like, yes, ma'am. She goes, this is Amanda Dinnell, JP's husband. Like JP and Cody. He's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I wouldn't have called to try to recruit Aiden unless it was something that JP wanted, you know. But it's just funny, like, you know, I think about that as a father. Like, if Aiden was like, hey, I'm going to join the Marine Corps, it's like, awesome. But then also, like, if there's a war going on, knowing what we know and what we've seen from war, like, there's also part of you that's kind of like,
Yeah.
okay, I get it.
You don't want them to.
I know.
You want them to be safe.
Yes. Like, are you sure you don't want to go do the trade school that you've been talking about? But I also know that this nation wasn't founded upon a lack of men and women being able to step up and answer. So I also understand that. It's like, well, we need our military. We need good people in our military.
Yeah.
And so there is that balance.
And yeah, it's the whole, oh, it was good. It was good for me. I can do it, but I don't want you to do it.
I know.
Because I want you to be safe.
Yeah.
And it's being able to detach from that
Yeah.
parental protection instinct.
So you signed in the fall of 05. What'd you do up until you left?
So I was what we call a 92-day reservist. So I was in my junior year.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
so when I talked to the recruiter, he said, why don't you want to be an officer? And I said, I don't know. I just want to be a Marine. He's like, well, you have almost 3 years of college. You should probably think about trying to be an officer. But what you can do, he probably had a quota, but what you can do is you can join the reserves as a 92-day reservist, finish college, and then you'll have, you know, a little bit of experience, and that'll help your officer package when you graduate college. I think he was probably looking out for me. He's a good guy. But at the same time, he probably did have a 92-day reservist quota that he had to meet. And so I said,
I'd be willing to bet.
and so I said, yeah, sounds good. That sounds good. I'll be an officer. And so I just went back to college, and I changed my major from computer science to interdisciplinary studies.
That's what I'm talking about.
Is that what you did?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Interdisciplinary studies means I'm going to take whatever classes I feel like I can pass and get a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to my advisor and I said, what?
Yeah, you do. So do I, because I did not finish interdisciplinary studies, but that's what my major finalized.
Yeah, I said,
It was my final
what major can I
declared.
do that gets me out of college in 4 years? Because I was ready to join the Marine Corps and be an officer. What major can I do? And she was like, there's only one. Like Doctor Strange, there's only one way to do it. I just calculated 15 million different possibilities, and there's only one thing that you can do. It's called interdisciplinary studies. And it's so interdisciplinary studies, it's 2 minors, and they have a core curriculum for whatever interdisciplinary studies core curriculum is. So you do that. And then my minors were astronomy and geology.
Wow,
And I sucked at both of them.
Rocks and stars, baby.
Yeah, D for diploma was my whole thing. But I made it. I
D's get
graduated.
degrees.
Well, I think it's C's. Well, I guess D's now.
Yeah.
Well, I had enough A's and B's in some classes that it averaged out
carried.
that I was able to make
That's
it
awesome.
eke across the finish line.
Astronomy.
And they were both
Awesome. There's nothing wrong with
things
those
I was
degrees.
interested
I'm
in,
just
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
to me, knowing you, it just makes me laugh.
Yeah, you wouldn't think.
Because I wouldn't, because I never heard you talk about it or give any reference to
Probably
that
served him
background.
really well later, though. Like knowing where the stars are would be great for land navigation, and then
Hey, I mean, combat engineering, there's a little bit of scientific stuff with finding IEDs and that kind of thing. That kind of scientific, just mindset, how to think about the world. That
knowing the
definitely is
layers of
beneficial.
sediment.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah. I guess knowing different kind. I didn't never really calculated any of that, but knowing about that probably could be helpful.
Yeah, could have been.
Could have been.
Or I think it's probably more the scientific mindset. But what you said was
Yeah,
okay.
Trying to gather an application
Trying
here.
to help Rob with his degree find how it applies.
So I just went back to college, and so after my junior year, went to boot camp, went back to college, did drills, finished my senior year, and then I went to combat engineer school and Marine combat training. And then while I was there, instead of at that point would be would have been the time that I should put my officer package in.
Yeah.
But right before I went, my company was saying, we're taking a volunteer platoon to go to Iraq. Who wants to go? And I went, I want to go.
Yeah.
Okay. What was that process?
That was just, so I signed up and they took me as a volunteer. We did a 4-month workup at 29 Palms, Mojave Viper. Did that whole thing.
So your rank and job was what at this time?
I was a Lance Corporal
Okay.
and combat engineer. So
Okay.
we were training. We were training a lot of the other guys, the senior guys in my company had been to Iraq in 2005 as combat engineers. And the vast majority
Those guys are awesome.
Yeah.
By the way. Combat engineers are amazing.
It's a very broad job, and there's multiple different disciplines. My discipline, so the discipline that you guys saw probably the most in Ramadi was the guys that were building the cops and all that stuff.
Yeah, they were working with the Navy Seabees.
Yeah, so there's that part of it. There's engineers that work on flight lines and airports and that kind of thing. And then there's the CEBs, Combat Engineer Battalion, which are the guys that are doing landmines, route clearance, IED detection, breaching, that kind of stuff. So that was what I was specialized in.
Did you pick that route, or were you voluntold?
Voluntold, because I was a reservist, and so I told my recruiter I actually wanted to be a tanker when I joined. He said, "Well, the unit that you're joining, they're a combat engineer unit. They don't have tanks." And I said, "What about a radio man? They don't have that." You're a combat engineer, and I went,
They send up
whatever.
smoke
I just
signals?
signed the signed the document.
They start building something like they're over there.
Yeah,
They
I
don't
had no
have
idea what they did.
radios, and they don't communicate with anybody.
Yeah.
Oh, sounds
Well, they
awesome.
they have radios, but they just didn't have that billet available.
Okay. I was
okay.
like, bro, this dude, and I obviously know that you know now, but I'm just thinking like, we don't use radios in this
Yeah,
unit.
no,
I thought
no,
that's what you were
radios,
saying.
no.
He said, and I
We
was
just
like,
go, hey,
over here.
So I didn't really know what I was getting into. I lucked out. Nothing against engineers that do all the other stuff, but I would say the CEB is the coolest engineer job that you get to do.
Yeah.
Blowing things up,
Nice.
And so we did a 4-month workup with 224, which was the infantry battalion that we attached to. So the way it would work is the combat engineer platoon attaches to a battalion,
Okay.
which is about 800 to 900 Marines, and so the platoon is about 3 or 4 squads of 13, so whatever that is, 52 or 42. And then each squad of that platoon goes with a company of infantry, and you kind of live with them at their bases. And then I'm kind of getting to the deployment now, but
No, I love it.
and the way it works was 2008. So you guys already cleared out the area. You defeated the terrorists in that area for the most part. Wasn't anything left for us to do besides come in behind and find all the buried leftover caches of weapons that they had. So the way it would work is we'd have all these, patrol bases out in the city that you guys, in Habanilla that you guys built or everybody built. And we would live out there and we would just provide security. And every now and then a local civilian would find us and say, there's a weapons cache over in that courtyard. And we'd patrol over there. The infantry would cordon it off, and I would take out my metal detector, and I would just search the courtyard trying to find metal. And then when I found a metal hit, I would dig it up and see what it was. And a lot of the times it was, artillery shells, grenades, machine guns,
Just buried.
RPGs, ordnance that they had buried, and they would wrap it in, burlap sacks. And then we'd pull that out. We'd call EOD. EOD would come and get it, and then we would head back.
Was there ever any like questioning or just digging into like how did these locals know that these were there?
That I do not know. I'm sure they probably. Yeah, that's a good question. That was above my pay grade. I wasn't asking those questions, but
I randomly know
would
that
imagine.
these things are buried here.
Yeah.
Can you come get them for me? Like,
yeah, I mean, so they could have been bad guys, but at
Maybe.
the same time, they could just be. They live there, so they probably.
And
At the same time, they probably would just wanted their area to be safe.
yeah, and they knew about it because the insurgent fighters would come in and be like, no, we're gonna use your house for these attacks.
Yeah.
We're gonna stage things in this courtyard. If you say anything, we're gonna kill you and your whole family.
Yeah.
So the people living there are like,
Yeah, that too.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they
There's
probably-
nothing here. And then when they realize that,
Yeah.
okay, these guys were gone, they didn't have that ability, then it's like, hey, can you come clear this stuff out?
And that's what you guys established when you were there. Security.
Yeah.
You can't build a city unless the people feel secure to do what they want to do to live their lives.
Yeah.
And so that's what you guys established, and then we just kind of took it and tried to take it a little bit further.
Yeah.
And continuing to establish the Iraqi police stations and clearing out all that dangerous stuff that's buried out there.
Yeah.
There was one IED strike the entire time. 2 guys were killed, but that was the only. No firefights, no other IED strikes.
For how long of a window was this? How many months?
We were there for 7 months.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it was
That's
the one.
significant change.
Yeah, and it was a really old IED. I don't think it hadn't been in place recently. I think it was an old one.
Dang, man.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I know you have some questions.
Yeah, well, I got a ton of questions, and I'm fascinated by the job of the combat engineer because it is so vast.
Yeah.
Like they are in so many ways like the jack of all trades. Like particularly as World War II is wrapping up, that's been my big like field of study for this year. Has been reading is consuming as much as I can on World War II, and I think in particular I've probably read like close to 40 books just on World War II this year.
You're never gonna run out.
So yeah, I know, right? But the job of the combat engineer, particularly in World War II, changed tremendously from what it was. Like it was no longer just construction. Now there's demolitions. Now there's looking for mines. There's all of these different things that were never really thought of until then. But it seems like from World War II even to 2008. That job continued to expand. When y'all were getting ready for what you were going to do, like you said, you were primarily on this one particular task. Did you get specialized training for that, or did y'all just have like a general training and then you were grouped and you're like, hey, you guys are going to go with bomb detection and breaching. You guys are going to go build stuff, and then just kind of set out, or did you get some specified training?
In combat engineer school, you kind of learn it all. You
Right.
learn the basics of everything. You learn a little bit about construction. You learn a little bit about pouring concrete, a little bit about felling trees, a little bit about explosives. You learn how to use metal and mine detectors, and you learn how to place minefields. And so you learn a little bit of everything. But then when you go to your battalion, whatever you go to your unit, that's where you do further training.
Yeah.
Where you in your specialty. So if you go to a CEB, then most of the training that you do is centered around mine detection, explosives, breaching, that kind of stuff. If you went to a support battalion, then you'd be doing all your training based around construction or whatever that unit does.
Okay.
And then in your workup, you would then further specialize in whatever is kind of going on in Iraq or Afghanistan at that time.
Gotcha.
So the reason that we were finding weapons caches is because we got that training with metal detectors and mine detectors. And then so naturally, if there's a buried weapon in the ground, you're going to have to use a metal detector to find it. The combat engineers were the ones that know how to use metal detectors, and the same thing with IEDs.
Okay. So one of the other questions that I have is, as it kind of relates to the vernacular around particularly the stuff that's happened since 2001, since September 11th, and the battles and the different kind of war that we've been in. The thought around like Vietnam in particular was that the combat engineers went and looked for mines.
Yeah.
What is the difference now between like mines, what we think of with a minefield, like you would see in Vietnam or in Korea or those kinds of things, and IEDs? Because it sounds like there's very different like ways to detect them and a different process that you use. But like from the most basic standpoint, like what is the difference between them? And then if you can talk a little bit about like what is different about the processes.
A mine is a manufactured military ordnance. So it's a specific, for lack of a better term, thing.
Yeah.
Where it's in a case, there's explosives in it, there's a trigger that gets triggered in a variety of different ways, and then the mine operates in a certain way. So a good example would be an anti-personnel mine is about that big. It takes, I can't exactly remember, but 3 or 4 pounds of pressure to push down the trigger and then when the firing pin hits the whatever, then it explodes with, however much weight of explosives. And then an anti-tank mine is a bigger version of that. It takes 300 pounds to set it off. So it's a mine is a specific military manufactured ordnance, like an artillery shell,
Right?
like a grenade. It's supposed to be used in a certain way. And so an improvised explosive device is an explosive device that is being used in a way that it's not built for. So the good example of this, the stuff that JP was running into in Ramadi, would be they would take an artillery shell and they'd probably put some sort of C4 or whatever on it. They put a blasting cap in the C4 and they would run wires to a pressure plate of some kind, and then so when you step on the pressure plate, that blows up your blasting cap. The blasting cap blows up the C4, and the C4 sympathetically detonates the artillery shell.
Gotcha.
So the artillery shell is the main damaging explosive, but an artillery shell is meant to be shot out of a howitzer.
Right.
And so since it's being used in an improvised way and exploding, it's called an improvised explosive device.
Gotcha.
And so in the early stages of the war, they were using primarily radio-controlled. I'm sure you probably saw videos when IEDs started becoming the popular weapon.
Yeah.
The thing they would do is they would use garage door openers, or they would use cell phones. They'd use walkie-talkies to trigger them. And of course, we figured out how to defeat those with using jammers. Mm-hmm. And so we would jam the signals. We would just have these big antennas going out the top of the trucks that would just send out a jamming signal. And then so the bomb couldn't hear it.
Right.
And then they started using.
I was going to say, have you ever been in a convoy where you drive over a bunch of IEDs and then as soon as you pass outside the jammed area, it goes.
No.
That's wild.
Dude,
Yes.
that is crazy.
Because you're like, okay, technology worked.
Yeah, thank
it worked.
you.
That's
Yeah,
scary,
you're always
man.
sitting there wondering, does this thing even working, man?
Yeah.
But those things were so good
Wow.
that we basically negated the vast majority of the radio-controlled IEDs.
They worked so well that they stopped IEDs, and now we have cancer from all that.
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows what the effects of that stuff is.
Right.
But
I do. Cancer.
cancer, there you go.
Sorry.
There's your answer.
But yeah, so we defeated those, and then they would just come up with continuously more creative ways of setting them off. So they would watch and they would see how far our vehicles were dispersed. They put a radio-controlled IED here, and they do what we call a daisy chain, where they would connect multiple ones, and they knew that once that one got so far away from the IED, so that what JP described happens, they could blow it up, and that daisy chain would go up the convoy, and they had it spaced out. So then, we would have to change the way that we dispersed.
Wow.
They were doing tripwires, infrared beams. But the way that it finally kind of settled by the time I was in Iraq and Afghanistan was pressure plate IEDs,
Yeah.
which essentially work like a landmine. I can describe it to you when we talk about Afghanistan, but it basically works like a landmine, but it's still an improvised explosive device because
Yeah.
the trigger is the pressure plate's not. It's an improvised pressure plate. And then they got it all the way down. And they knew that we were using metal detectors to find them. So then obviously they would just continuously improve their IEDs, taking out more and more and more metal.
The infrared ones were pretty crazy because once that beam is going, the circuit's complete.
Yeah.
And what trips it is when the circuit's not complete. So
Yeah.
you stop that infrared beam from going from one point to the next. That's what triggers
Wow.
the thing. Similar to like the tripwires, or if it was what were the other ones? Oh, then if it's so same thing. It's like under pressure. Like, oh, this is a tripwire. We're just going to cut it. Well, as soon as you cut it and it releases the pressure,
Yeah.
then that triggers
That's
it.
what it's looking
Pressure
for.
release trigger. Yeah.
Wow.
It's all different types, and sometimes it's the pressure for being tripped, or it being released, or the IR beam being stopped. Like it's
And they would have
that's crazy.
anti-handling devices. So if you went up and you tried to mess with it, you would set off this anti-handling device. The one thing that I do want to clarify here is, how when you're in the movies, you're watching a movie, and they're walking, and then you hear a click, and they go, "Oh no, you stepped on a landmine. Now you can't move."
Yeah.
Or the landmine that doesn't exist. That's not a thing.
Yep.
You mean like the same noise of like a gun, the slide racking and chambering a new round when they pull it out of the holster?
Yeah.
Like everybody has just a dead man's gun.
Yeah, there's no such
Before they
thing
get-
as
they
pressure
pull
on,
out the
pressure
gun,
off.
it's
Not to my knowledge. Maybe I don't know. Maybe there is some rare thing, but it's not like every time you step on a landmine. It just when you step on it, it goes boom. The only thing I think what they're basing that off of is something called a bouncing Betty,
Right.
which is you step on it and then there's a delay. There's a 3-second delay, and the bounce of the explosive shoots up at it and then explodes midair. That's I think
enough, and that was a World War II device.
Oh yeah, you probably know all
Yeah.
about. You probably know more about those than I do.
I do not know all about it, but I've read enough about it to know like how dangerous they were. But there were a lot of guys that stepped on those in particular, and they would like kind of do the cinematic thing where they like run.
Yeah.
And you know the guys that realized what they had done a lot of times would like fall to the ground and try to cover it up.
Yeah.
In order to try to keep it, you know, at a low place so it didn't damage everybody around them because they knew that, like they were gone.
Yeah.
What makes because if I listen to the way that you guys talk about mines versus IEDs, the IED is thought of as a kind of a particularly villainous type of ordinance. Like what makes the IED so much more I guess like psychologically set aside into this, like it's got its own particular kind of evil versus the landmine. Why is it so much different in the way that it's talked about?
I think mostly because it's mostly I think because and JP, you can tell me what you think too, but I think it's primarily because the terrorists knew they couldn't fight us. They couldn't win a gunfight.
Yeah.
So they would resort to this tactic. And so I think because of that, it's kind of seen as cowardly because the manly and the manly, courageous thing to do would just be to fight us one-on-one.
Yeah, on the field of battle.
On the field of battle. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say. I would say that I don't want to the credit of people that fight that way. It's asymmetric warfare. You got to fight the fight that you can fight. And so it's not necessarily, I don't know, I guess maybe it's still cowardly, but, when you're fighting an asymmetric war, you got to do what you got to do from your perspective.
Yeah, it's all about winning at that point. So, I mean, we set up ambushes on people. And then, so technically people could probably say the same. Actually, I know people say the same thing, like about snipers. Like, oh, you're hiding off. You're like, well, yeah.
Yeah, you're sniping people from far away.
Yeah, if I can shoot you from a protected spot over 1,000 yards away and you have no idea where it came from, guess what I'm going to do?
Yeah.
I'm going to take that shot all day long.
I guess the only thing that isn't cowardly is if both sides got together and just had a big fist fight, which we would still win. But,
we
Right,
would
yeah,
still
for
win that. I think the perspectives on the IEDs is just because they're so nasty. Like, they're just, to what Rob was saying, like a mine. I mean, a mine is obviously nasty, but there are so many things with IEDs that, I mean, it's limited by the ideas that the individual has.
Yeah. So there's a lot of trickery with it.
Yeah, this sounds
And
like
obfuscation.
the scope of destruction with an IED is so unknown. Until like if you stepped on or if you rolled over an anti-tank landmine or you found one, you've got an idea of like it's gonna do this, it's this type of mine or whatever. But when you find an IED, you don't know if it's big enough to hurt or maim a couple of people or if it's designed to blow up this entire city block, including the citizens that are there.
And it's the people that it's associated with too. It's associated with terrorists.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
It's the association, because I remember going through third phase in BUDS when we started dealing with explosives and all the different things that you can do with them. I'll just share the story when we're not recording afterwards, but I remember the instructors telling us like how creative that you can get with explosives if you were trying to take somebody out.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and again, it goes back to like, well, that it's not viewed. I didn't ever view it as like a bad thing, because in my mind, it's like, well, if I'm doing this, it's to take out an evil person.
Yeah.
And it's like, So I think Rob, I think you hit it on the head with that. It's
Yeah.
like it's because of who it's associated
Yeah,
with.
and it's the Unabomber used IEDs. The Oklahoma City bombing, that was an IED.
Yeah.
The Boston bombing, that's an IED. So all these different things
Acts
are
of
done by
terrorism.
evil people, whereas people in the military, when we go out to war, we use military ordnance. We use the landmine,
Yeah.
and so that's probably just seen as more acceptable because it's.
Yeah, and we also follow. We have like
We follow the
restrictions.
Geneva Convention.
Geneva
Yeah.
Convention.
I don't even
There are
know if you can
certain-
emplace minefields anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are also certain rounds, like in like rifles and pistols, that I remember. There are certain rounds that like you couldn't use, and you're like, wait, what? Like I'm
Yeah.
shooting the person in the chest and the face. Like, does it really matter?
And there's certain mines you can't use to. I don't even think that you can put light landmines out there anymore. I think that's against the Geneva Convention, maybe, but
Well,
you can check my work on that.
Yeah, check. Let us know. Comment on YouTube.
And then comment
let
on
us
me
know if Rob's
personally.
wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Let us know. Start an argument on the YouTube channel. Boost the algorithms. Thank you.
I do. I think in the world of the NCC that's one of those things that we don't really get. Like we hear about landmines, we hear about things like the 38th parallel and things like that are sort of these no man's land type of areas because they have all of that stuff. But the IED is treated with a special kind of villainy. So it's something that's kind of mysterious to us that have never been around it. We've only heard about it on the news, or we hear veterans talk about it, or maybe we saw the Hurt Locker, and
God.
that's
Come on, man.
like that's our
Don't watch
only,
that movie.
What? don't take that away from me.
Yeah, but Jeremy.
You like that
Renner-
movie?
Yeah,
It's my connection to you.
but Jeremy Renner's pre-Hawkeye phase is the only
my
real
God.
connection that we have to that. And so understanding like why those particular things are thought of as so evil, the destruction and things they cause, but particularly why they were so dangerous for, guys in your position, the combat engineers that were doing what you were doing, to come up on and to try to discover. That's a much bigger scope than I think what a lot of just civilians understand it as. Like, oh, it's just, kind of like a landmine, but it sounds like, yeah, it could be like an anti-personnel landmine, but it also could be something that was designed to destroy an entire convoy, which also means like city blocks and all the civilians and the men, women, and children that were in that area that want nothing to do with either side of this. They were just trying to live their lives.
And you could use landmines in an IED.
Yeah, and
Yes.
all of that is just wild to me, which is why everything that you do in particular, or that you did during your service, like all of that is so fascinating to me because it's such a large part of everybody who served in, those particular theaters. That was just part of daily life for y'all, is having to deal with such an unknown with the IEDs and what they were capable
they can
of.
be anywhere. They can be hidden anywhere. And it's really just up to the creativity of an evil mind. I think that's probably the thing it is these terrorists are absolutely evil, the things that they do.
Oh, demonic.
And if
evil,
and if you let them get creative about how evil they can be, they can come up with, that's a really good way to put it, the most demonic things that you could possibly imagine. They put nails in there. They put bacteria in there. They put all sorts of stuff.
Okay, so bacteria.
They put
Human
freaking
feces.
IEDs on kids, and they'd have kids run up with a suicide vest. They
mentally
do
handicapped
crap like
teenagers.
No way.
Yeah, we saw that in Ramadi.
Women,
a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Force
Dude,
them.
that's-
Hey, we're gonna kill your kid unless you go over there with this vest, and we're gonna blow you up.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
It's absolutely disgusting. Like they would entice mentally challenged, handicapped kids with a piece of candy to wear a vest and go talk to some people. They would send them to a checkpoint, and then as they got closer, they would blow up the kids with the remote
gosh.
detonator. Yeah.
yeah.
and
So
then,
it's just
like you said, screws and nails. They would put human feces in there, so that way you're getting the infections. And then glass, which turns into like almost like a molten lava.
Yeah.
Because of the explosive. So now
explosively formed penetrators.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Fuel
glass
oil. They
and
put
stuff.
fuel oil in there to make a big explosion. They put aluminum in it. They just anything that you can think of that is as evil as possible, they would put it in there.
Good grief.
And whereas JP and I, we want to kill them, but we're not gonna use a kid to do it. We're not gonna
Right.
mutilate them. We're just gonna kill them.
Yeah.
We're just gonna shoot them in the head and be done with it.
Yeah,
We're
and
not gonna torture them and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the difference.
That's the difference.
We have rules, and we also do the right things for the right reasons.
Yeah.
They don't have any moral code. Well, I guess they do. It's just a really screwed up moral code.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's still a moral code, even if
To
there's no
them.
morality in it. Yeah,
Yeah, there is. Yep. No, I like how you said that.
Yeah, so even as indiscriminate as the landmine can be, it doesn't care who steps on it. It's not set out with the same sort of malice that the IED is. And
well, a landmine can be set out with malice.
Sure,
it's the same amount of malice, but yeah, it's just depending on the person that's putting it out. But yeah.
Wow.
But do you ever get people ask you if you ever stepped or if you ever saw an IUD? That's an NCC, or that's how you know. That's you should get the NCC badge.
Do we need to start making stickers that we could just hand out for people? That's
hey, JP, you ever run into any of them IUDs?
I got a sticker for you, bud.
Yeah.
You're going to put that on your chest and wear it proud.
I've gotten that not that many times, probably less than 5 times. I'm just like, no, never have actually.
That's
oh,
amazing.
Man.
So how long was your deployment to Iraq?
That was 7 months, standard Marine Corps deployment back then.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Oh, so that's the one we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. We kind of went into a different realm.
So on that deployment, was there any like major leadership lessons that you drew from that deployment? Any growth for you as a young Marine from that deployment? Anything stand out that as you think about it years later?
Yeah, mostly just leadership failures on my part more than anything. I wish I had Extreme Ownership back, I wish that was one of the first books I ever read, that kind of thing. I wish.
You're graduating high school and going out to be a contributing member of society. Read this book. Read it with intent a second time through. And then the third time, highlight, underline, and take notes.
Yeah, certainly some interesting situations just about that. If I looked through that entire deployment through the lens of Extreme Ownership, what we teach about leadership, I could identify all sorts of stuff where I could have, instead of complaining about my commanding officer, I could have tried to build a relationship with the commanding officer, all sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah. Let's role play through that, because I know somebody listening to this is like, yeah, that sounds great, but Rob, you were only a E4?
Lance Corporal E3.
Oh, you're an E3.
E3.
Come on. You're not building a relationship with your commanding officer.
Yeah.
So what could you have really done? You're just an E3 in the Marine Corps.
Am I going to be talking to my commanding officer directly? Probably not a lot. Yeah, not very often.
Okay, you should occasionally, I would hope.
I would. Yeah, at a platoon level, I would run. I would. Captain Lugers was his name.
Awesome.
Here's a funny story. So one time I was a salty Lance Corporal, and this was actually at the time where, when you guys were in Ramadi, you were just wearing regular flak vest, right? Flak vest, standard Kevlar. Or were you wearing?
We weren't. We had body armor that was like a plate carrier.
Okay.
So you had like the 9mm wrap that you put underneath.
Yeah.
And then the plate carrier on the outside.
But you didn't have the MTV that they came out with, for 2008.
The soldiers and Marines had those.
Yeah, we had this thing called the MTV.
That was like the neck thing.
Yeah, you had the neck protector, the groin
side
protector.
Yeah.
Front sappies, side sappies, just super thick. It probably weighed 50 pounds by itself.
I felt bad for those guys that had to be up in the turret gun wearing that thing, trying to function.
I felt bad for us having to walk around with those dang things. And then we had the helmet, right? So,
yeah.
And of course, none of us wanted to wear the gear. Yeah. And so one time we were out doing something in the pitch black, and we walked back over to where all of our platoon was. And, we had been out doing our thing without Kevlars on, without our gear on, because we didn't want to wear it. And we went back, and we came back, and somebody said to me, it was completely dark, and somebody said to me something like, what are you guys doing? And it was like, we had to come back and get our gear because the gear enforcer said we had to. And then out of the pitch black, I hear Captain Lugers go, the reason that we're wearing the gear? Yes, sir.
Oh, shoot.
But he didn't. That's all I said. But anyway, so that's a good example of, instead of complaining, how about you understand why? How about you try and build relationships up your chain of command? The fact of the matter is, there was not going to be a whole lot of changing the policy on when you have to wear your gear. You just have to wear your gear when you're outside the wire. This is how it is.
You don't say.
Yeah, exactly.
The gear that allows you to do your job.
So at least trying to
understand,
and how about don't complain about things that nobody can change. They're just
wasted energy, wasted time,
wasted energy, and
using up that leadership capital,
damaging the relationship with my CO. Because then there was a later point where we. For whatever reason, there was some rumor that we were going to get to go to Sadr City when that was kicking off.
Oh, nice.
And we didn't. But
I'm sorry.
I wanted to be in that platoon because we weren't doing anything in Habanillo. We were just doing, route clearance and stuff, IED detection. And so I wanted to go get into a fight.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to get selected for that squad that was going over there, it probably would have been a great idea if I had had a good relationship with my CO, with my platoon guide, and all these people. And so, that never helps you to have a bad relationship with anybody.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that until you made the comment of the platoon. So when I hear CO, I'm thinking commanding officer of SEAL Team 3.
Oh, yeah.
That's the
Right,
CO
right,
that
right,
we have.
right.
But for you in a platoon, that person is what, like in 02,
Usually it'd be a
03?
lieutenant. Yeah, usually be an 01 or 02, but ours was an 03.
See, I'm thinking like 05, 06.
Oh, no. Yeah. Usually it'd just be a lieutenant,
Okay.
which would be, 01
Like
or 02.
for us, that's like an assistant officer in charge.
But since when we were in the
OIC.
reserves,
Got it. Okay.
he was an 03.
Isn't that funny? And that's such a good example of me not having all the proper information and making an assumption, and then not like putting it together until as we talking more, you're like, actually, I was like, oh wait, hold on, that makes sense. Different terminology.
Yeah, but even then, still, a lance corporal's not going to be talking to the platoon commander very often.
That's funny.
You're not going to go to your platoon commander with anything. You're going to go to your fire team leader first. I was a fire team member. I wasn't even a fire team leader.
Hey, boss, I got some ideas of things we need to change.
Yeah.
He's
Hey.
like, who?
Hey, LT, come here. So there was, and then there was another situation where a contingent of my fire team, me and this other guy, were going to get sent out to live with a platoon as their combat engineers. There's two of us.
Nice.
And he was senior to me in terms, he was same rank, but he had more seniority, but I got put in charge. And
Okay.
so that was a unique leadership situation that I didn't really do anything to. I just went up to him and said, "Are you going to be cool if I'm like in charge or whatever?" And he said, "Yeah, it's fine." And then that was the only thing I did. So I didn't really, maybe that's it worked out.
I mean,
Yeah, we worked well together. Maybe that was a good move, but I didn't do that in a calculated way by any means.
I mean, as I'm thinking about it, could you have done it different and better? For sure. Like
Yeah.
we can always play that.
If I had role played that a few times with JP, probably could have been a lot better.
But now,
fixed.
But like anything in life, like we can always do things better. But I mean, there's like Leif Babin says, there's only two measures that matter: effective and ineffective.
Yeah, and it worked.
And it worked because
And we were really good friends, so we had a great relationship.
See, okay, that's why you're able to do that.
Yeah.
Like you guys were good friends. It's like when I was the LPO over my roommate, and then he ended up being the LPO over me, leading petty officer.
yeah.
So there's just times where it's like, hey, bro, it's like, hey, we're boys, but we work together, and now you work for me, now
Yeah.
I work for you. It's having mutual respect for each other and also being a professional.
Yeah, and then when we got over there to the patrol base, I didn't all of a sudden become the boss. Like I was going, "Hey, Saunders, front center, parade rest now." We were just still, just the two of us as combat engineers. It was a 2-person thing, so it's not like it even mattered.
Stand at attention while I'm talking to you.
You get it. No, it was just us. It was just me and my buddy Saunders, and we played video games together, and we went on missions, and it was just
so
normal.
awesome.
I handled the extra administrative stuff, like whenever we found a cache, I had to type up a little PowerPoint.
Oh, that's
presentation.
why he was 100% good.
Yeah, he
now.
was probably
He's
good. He's like, "I'm going to play Madden. You're going to go do that stuff."
Yeah.
And it was just, if he wanted to, I let him do, I let him be in charge of whatever. I wasn't sitting there being a tyrant to my friend.
Could you imagine?
You know what I mean?
I say that, could you imagine? But you and I have both worked with people where
yeah.
as soon as they got that position,
Oh, yeah.
it's unreal.
So, yeah, I guess maybe I did handle that situation pretty well.
I think you did.
In a completely ignorant and uncalculated way. But, yeah, it worked out.
Yeah,
I did a pretty decent job with it.
that's awesome. Okay, so you come back from that first deployment.
Yeah.
What was it like? Did you just come home, spend some time with your family? Did you have a girlfriend at the time? Just hanging out with your boys, your
geology
friends?
degree.
did you go out to
Really
some
got into
national
rocks. I just started studying rocks.
There's a YouTube clip.
But you and my 2-year-old would get along so well right now.
cannot
If you
get out of
left
my
for
brain.
rocks.
I'll show you later. This guy's like, he's on the comedy show. He's talking about how he loves rocks.
Yep.
I'll show you
I'm
later.
not special, but I
just-
love rocks.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not special,
It's
but I
really
love
got
rocks.
into igneous rocks.
He goes, I got a rock in my pocket right now. I found it outside.
Well, I like the way they feel. They help me sleep.
Okay. So
No,
you're
so
hanging out on
I got
leave.
back. I was still a
rock
reservist, so I
stuff.
didn't have a job. I graduated college.
Yeah.
And went on the deployment right after I graduated. Didn't have a job when I got back. I
Oh,
was just
so
a
you're not
reservist, so
even
I got
attached
cut
to-
from active duty,
Oh my gosh.
cut back into the world. So I went back to living. I moved in with my mom and my stepdad,
Okay.
and that deteriorated very quickly because I was now a war veteran, and my stepdad wanted me to go out and weed whack, and he wanted to tell me what to do. He wanted to boss me around. I wasn't having it,
And
so
how old were you
I
at
moved
the
out.
time?
I joined when I was 20, so I was probably 22, I think.
22-year-old old.
22-year-old just got back from Iraq.
Yeah.
And
Hardened war.
my stepdad was, giving me crap about how I needed to weed whack, and I was like, "All right, I have money. I'm gonna go get an apartment in Blacksburg, which is where Virginia Tech is."
Yeah.
And so I just got an apartment in Blacksburg and started looking for a job. I'd never really had a job before. My life was funded by working on the farm before.
Yeah.
And to my parents' credit, they pay me $10 an hour for doing manual labor, so I was getting paid really well.
Not bad.
And so I just started looking for a job. Eventually, I found a job I started looking for a job with the knowledge that my company was going to send a platoon to Afghanistan in the next year. So I wasn't looking for anything real serious. I was just kind of trying to find something to make money while I waited for that
just
deployment.
bridge that gap.
Yeah. And so, but there was a little bit of uncertainty about when it was going to be. So I knew I needed to I had a bunch of deployment money that I basically lived off of for 8 months while I looked for a job.
That's awesome.
Did a lot of drinking, did a lot of hanging out with my friends, a lot of that was my stupid year. Where I did all my stupid stuff. That was the year I did it.
Bro, I had stupid years.
Yeah.
Years.
I'm lucky that I didn't get into drinking until after that deployment, or maybe the workup until the end of that when I went to Afghanistan. Those were my drinking years.
Yeah. Wow.
So standard stupid stuff. No need to get into that, but so I just tried to find a job, and I eventually found a job putting out traffic counters, which was really fun.
Nice.
We would drive up to a spot on the highway, and you would throw a tube across the road, nail it in on either side, tape it down in the middle, connect it to a box, and you do punch some stuff into the box, and then you'd write down what you did on your little clipboard, and then you go to the next spot. It was a pretty fun job. I really liked doing it, and then I think I worked that for maybe 3-4 months before we went over for the work up to Afghanistan.
Bro, that's so awesome.
It was a fun little
So
job. I liked
casual.
it.
Yeah.
Like, I am super envious of that just casual attitude. But you're like, I had this job. I liked it. It was great. And then, boom, we do a workout.
I got to do whatever I wanted to. I just basically put tripwires across the highway. So
Yeah, kind of was. And then there'd be sometimes every now and then where there'd be be on a 70-mile-an-hour road where there's trucks going by, and you're like, don't get hit by that guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's some good life
But it was
advice.
fun. It was kind of. I had a partner, and he would drive. I would get in the truck at his house. I'd go to sleep for a while, and he would drive us out 2 hours to where we were going. Spend all day putting out traffic counters. Get back, go to the gym, eat dinner,
Bro, that's
go to bed, play video games.
not bad.
And then on the weekends, go out to bars and ride my motorcycle around with my friends. So it was pretty.
What kind of
pretty
motorcycle?
Fun time. I had a Triumph Speed 4.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fun, man. It
A
was
little
a
Britmobile.
little. Yeah, I like it's a naked bike, so it doesn't have all the the plastic on it. It was cool. I liked
Yeah.
it. Rode. I wasn't that great at riding it, but I was okay. Grew up riding dirt bikes, and so
when
did
you
that.
say I
Never crashed
wasn't
it.
that good at riding it, what does that mean?
Well, so there's some people that are really good at riding a motorcycle. They can drag their knee. They can get they can do turns really fast, and they're very skilled at going fast on curvy roads, I guess is what I meant.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. It's all about weight distribution in the hands.
Yeah, that looking where you're going, all that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and I was starting to get a little bit better at it, but
I recently, because I've been doing 75 hard, I bought a bicycle.
there you go.
And after riding motorcycles for years, I was like, oh, this will be easy. And everybody always says it's just like riding a bike. we live in a trailer park that's got a gravel, like, shared kind of driveway that is not the most well maintained, and so there are several, like, gravel potholes.
Oh yeah, gravel will get you.
Between the 100 yards from my house to the end of the driveway, the very first time I rode that bike, I almost ate it like half a dozen times. And I called my dad and I was like, hey, it's 10 o'clock at night. And he was like, yeah, what's up? I was like, I'm going out for a bike ride. And Kirsten's got the babies. So you're going to be my call if something happens and I end up breaking something on the side of the road. I'm just going to share my location with you. And he's like, all right, yeah, no, sounds good. I was like, you don't have confidence in yourself? I was like, not after what I just did. No, there's no confidence here.
Are you going
here
out with
at
a
all.
spare tube, all the necessary
No.
tools to fix your own flat tire?
No.
Okay, so
No.
you're completely
No.
unprepared. Okay.
Well, I've ridden, yes, 100%. You know,
I like how you're starting to justify it, and you're like, no.
yeah, I'm going out unprepared. And the good news is this hybrid Trek that I got only weighs 30 pounds. So if if something happens, it'll be easy to get it back home. I'm riding mostly on a bike path, so it's not like I'm going.
Well, if it's cheap, you just
off-road too
abandon
much.
it and you just walk home.
It's not. It was
Uber.
more than what I wanted to pay for a bicycle. But
You're just gonna have to cache it, hide it. Under.
Yeah, just hide
it.
it somewhere.
no, that's why I've got my emergency call. So
Yeah, okay.
But yeah,
that's how
I can
you
understand
prepare.
like growing up on a bike and then riding again and being like, oh no, I'll be good at this. And
Can you change your own tire?
Time. Yeah, I can
You
change
can't
my
put
tire.
it. Okay,
yeah,
you can put
yeah,
a new tire. Okay.
yeah.
That's
I can also change the gears, which took a little bit
Okay.
because it was a new bike and I stretched the cable out, so I had to figure out how to.
Oh, you had
how
to
to get
adjust the
cable.
derailleur and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yep.
Adjust the.
I had to
Okay,
learn
all
the
right.
word derailleur, which is not spelled how it sounds.
Derailleur. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Anyway, after
Yeah.
that, I don't forget what we were talking about.
Yeah.
What I was doing in between deployments. Yeah, I was
your
just riding
job.
motorcycles, working, trying to find a girlfriend. Sort of had one, sort of didn't have one.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it.
And then doing drills, doing Marine Corps drills every
Cool.
month.
How long were you home before you left again?
So let's see, we got back in August of 2008, and we deployed again in December of 2009. We went back on another workup.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah, this time with 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines.
Okay, cool. And then where did you deploy to and for how long?
Okay, so this time we went to Afghanistan, and
Nice.
as you probably know, 2010, Afghanistan was kicking back off.
I was there with you.
You were in 2010, really?
Yeah.
Where?
Down south, Kandahar. South of
Okay, I was
Kandahar.
in Delaram to begin with,
Okay.
over in I think Delaram's actually just outside of Helmand Province. But we went into this place called Delaram, which is a lot like what Habbaniyah was like when we got there. It was very pacified.
I was gone by the time you got there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
April of
Sorry.
2010 is when we got there.
Yeah, I left right before
Okay.
that.
All right, yeah, okay. So Delaram was very calm. We just set up in a patrol base. I was the single combat engineer for an entire platoon, so I was very busy going out on a lot of patrols. And that's a good leadership lesson to talk about is that platoon, how when I got there, they didn't know who I was. They didn't want a combat engineer.
Why?
I don't think they really realized how I could help them.
So they didn't understand your value.
Yes, I didn't. They didn't know what I was there to do.
Oh.
They didn't know who I was. They didn't know anything about me. They just knew that I was a poke, which is people other than grunts, which is 95% of the Marine Corps. So obviously, I was coming from a little bit of a. This is how it worked. I got there and I went to the COC, the Command Operations Center. I checked in with the platoon sergeant. He said, "Okay, yeah, we got." And we had these 4. The patrol base was maybe 2 football fields, rectangular, stacked side by side. And so they had these 4 or 5 C huts or SWA huts, the ones that have an angled roof. And each squad had one, and then there was the attachments one. Mm-hmm. So I go into the attachments C hut, and I'm the only person there. They just put me in a C hut by myself. They're like, here's where you're staying. And I went in there. I was like, okay. Luckily, I had an air conditioner, so it wasn't that bad. But I was in there by myself. And then the next day, they took my air conditioner, so I was just in this hot C hut by myself, sitting there. And I was like, what am I gonna do? And I just kind of assumed that it was gonna be like my first deployment, where I would just have to sit there. And the grunts, the infantry, they would come and they'd say, hey, we're going on a patrol now. come with us, and I wouldn't have to do anything, And this time I was a corporal at this point, so I was just sitting there by myself. And then like maybe 3 or 4 days went by and nobody talked to me. I'd just go eat and go back to my cot, sleep.
Jeez,
nobody was saying anything to me.
That sucks.
And eventually I figured out who the squad leaders were. And I started going up to each one of the squad leaders and introducing myself. I'm Corporal Jones. This is what I do, this is what I do. I'm a combat engineer. I don't think they knew what a combat engineer. I still don't think they really realized what I was there for.
Yeah.
I didn't tell them. I just said I'm a combat engineer. I'm your combat engineer. I would love to go out on some patrols with you. And so they just saw a pogue coming up, a reservist pogue at that, coming up to them, asked them to go on a patrol, and they're sitting there going, "How about no?" in their heads. Until eventually I got to 4th squad. 4th squad leader, this guy McGregor. He had probably 3 or 4 deployments. He knew how beneficial combat engineers could be. He let me start going out with them.
Oh, wow.
So I started going out with those guys. I was on point with their point guy, and every time they wanted me to look through an area for an IED, I would go look. I would find a safe path, and then we continue on. And then I think the word kind of spread. That's what I was doing. And then the other squads started let me go out with them too. And so that's just a little bit of a lesson. That'd be a lesson in relationship building.
Yeah.
And people have to know how you can help. You want to show people how you can help them. You want to help them. You want to show them how you can help the team. And when you can show how you can help them, how you can be a part of the team, how you can aid their mission, then they're like, oh, yeah, come on over and be on the team.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it got through that pogue barrier to eventually the point, when we got to Sangin, when we're doing all of the heavy fighting, one of them came up to me like, "You're an honorary grunt." It's like, wow, I guess I'm honored.
That's amazing. I like the vulnerability that you share in that story of just recognizing like, hey, I didn't do a good job communicating to these guys what you did, what your job was, the value that you bring. And it shows also like an example of what these guys as leaders failed. But I know what you're doing. You're going to take ownership because that's what you do. It's the right thing to do. I'm looking at it from a different angle and just thinking about how these guys, if you're in a leadership position and somebody is, wanting to work with you or introducing themselves to you, you should understand the value that they bring. Ask them questions. Carlos shared that when he was an investment banker and he was putting together these decks, like he knew he met one of these guys. I'm drawing a blank on the terminology for this guy's or analyst, an analyst. That analyst's job was to build slide decks because that's what they were really good at. No one ever told Carlos that. He didn't know that. The guy never said anything until he finally figured it out one time. He's like, "Wait, hold on, what?" And so now he's using this guy as an asset.
Yeah.
And it made Carlos's life easier, which meant that he could do his job at a better level.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the thing that we have to be aware of is like understanding people's roles, responsibilities, their capabilities. How can they be a part of the team to help the team accomplish the mission?
And it was they were I don't want to be disparaging, but they were ignorant to the point that they were putting themselves in a more dangerous situation. They had an IED finding, expert, for lack of a better term, and they were just using guys that had done a 1-week class on the metal detector. One of the guys came up to me one time and was like, "I sure am glad that you're here because I have no idea how to use that metal detector." One time I went out and I didn't have batteries in it, so I just pretended. That's the level. I mean, and I'm not trying. These guys weren't. They know how they could infantry tactics. They are the best. They were the best. They could kill the enemy like no other. But they just didn't have a lot of training on the metal detectors, and that's what I was there to do. And, I mean, to the point I would go up to the lieutenant, and I would go, "Hey, sir." He would be walking that way or whatever. I catch up and like trying to get on some patrols. "Hey, sir, can I talk to you for a minute?" And he'd be like, "Yeah." And he would just keep walking. I'd be like, "Yeah, what?" And he would just walk away. I'd be like, "Okay."
Was the guy that had the metal detector without the batteries, was he like making the noises still? Was he just going like, boop?
I'd have to ask him. You don't want to hear noises, so no noises is a good thing.
Yeah. All right, there you go.
He was he was detecting.
Yeah.
Just not with the right tool. He was detecting with his feet, and that's not what you want to do. Ultimately, that is what you're doing.
Right.
in the end,
Which we'll get to.
yeah, we will get to that. It's a concept called proofing the lane. We'll get to it. But yeah, so we started that deployment in Delaram, and not a whole lot going on. One firefight, and then we handed that over to the Georgian Army, which when I talk about simple, I talk about how I had to teach the Georgians how to find IEDs. It's this really funny, kind of a funny story how I tie it all in.
Oh, please share it right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Well, so when I teach simple, I go, so second law of combat is simple. A couple months after I got to Afghanistan, the Georgian Army arrived, and this is the country of Georgia. So the Georgian Army arrived. My lieutenant came up to me and he went, Jones, I need you to go out tomorrow. I need you to teach the Georgians how to find IEDs. And the reason he was asking me is because I was a combat engineer. I did what I told you to do. And then at this point I go, and as you can see, I wasn't very good at it. And usually that gets a big laugh. I was like, but that's all we had. We only had me, so he had to ask me. So I went back to my cot and I planned out ROB Jones's Harvard-level IED class. Finished it up, took the Georges out to this big dirt patch we had in our patrol base, got them in a big semicircle in front of me, and I immediately recognized a potential problem with my plan. What was my problem? Then everybody goes, they didn't speak English. Like, the Georges didn't speak English. They spoke this entirely different language called Georgian. And I just kind of go on, and at that point I bring up a volunteer to serve as my Georgian interpreter, and I go through the little class that I taught, which was I do this ridiculous, I think you've heard it before, I do this ridiculous first sentence that it's literally pretty much exactly what I said to the Georgians about magnetic resonances and using all these TATP, HMTD, ANFO, and blasted. I'm using all these terms that they had no idea in Georgian how to say, let alone in English. Mm-hmm. And so then I have that person try and repeat what I said, and they can't do it. And then I teach the rest of simple, but that's kind of what happened with the Georgians. I was trying to teach them how to find IEDs, and I completely failed. And I don't know what happened to those guys. So hopefully they didn't step on any IEDs because I sucked. I failed those guys. I blew it. Yeah. So anyway, it's kind of a funny story, but at the same time, it's kind of tragic that I sucked so bad at teaching them. I wish I had extreme ownership before.
At least they had something, right? They got something.
I mean, they got something.
I taught them a little bit,
nothing.
Maybe they got some stuff, but yeah. So
that's good.
That's kind of what I do with simple. I use that story to highlight how important it is.
Okay.
So the Georgian Army arrived.
Yep.
We moved back to Delaram, and then we got taken to a place called Sangin, Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. And this is right in line. I don't know if you remember in 2010, places like Marja.
Yeah.
Places like that. So this is when all those battles were going on. They were kind of clearing. I forget which direction they were going, but Sangin was kind of the next battleground in Helmand province. And then so that's when we took over from the British who were there. And the British, great fighters, as you know, but they were very undermanned in that area and very under-resourced, so they weren't able to leave their patrol bases. So they just sat in their patrol bases, and the Taliban had the run of the area. And so we went in to pacify that area and start pushing the Taliban back further.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the scene for my injury and all that stuff.
Okay. So walk us into that.
Yeah, sure. So in Afghanistan, so I told you in Iraq that my job was primarily finding inert weapons caches, not really that dangerous. Could they be dangerous? Sure, but pretty undangerous. To now Afghanistan, they didn't have weapons caches in Afghanistan because there weren't any leftover munitions. Most of the IEDs were made with homemade explosives. Mm-hmm. So they would go and they would get these big bags of ammonium nitrate, as I'm sure you know, and they would make explosives out of ammonium nitrate. They put that into a big yellow jug. They'd make a blasting cap out of a Bic pen. They'd take a Bic pen, cut it in half, and they would fill that with something called TATP or HMTD, which is extremely, extremely volatile homemade explosives. And they'd fill it with that, and they would then, what they would do is they would put a single strand of copper wire into the blasting, 2 strands of copper wire into the blasting cap. Mm-hmm. One strand would go to one pole of a 9-volt battery, and then the wire would go from the other side of that 9-volt battery to like a Pert Plus bottle that was cut in half lengthwise, so it folds open like a sandwich. And then coming into the one side, that wire would come in and would kind of go zigzag across the top, and that would be that half. And then the other half would be a zigzag on the other half of the Pert Plus bottle that would go all the way back to the blasting cap. So then they would tape those things together like that. They would complete making sure the wires weren't touching, and they would tape it, and they'd bury that a couple inches under the ground, and then that's the IED. And so when you step onto the pressure plate, the Pert Plus bottle, the wires touch, it completes the circuit, the electrical charge from the battery goes into the blasting cap explodes, sympathetically detonates the big jug of ammonium nitrate. So that's how it would work. And so very, very, very little metal in that whole thing. The battery and the copper wire, single strand. So very, very, very little metal. And so it'll be the combat engineer EOD's job whenever we came to an area where we were pretty sure there was going to be an IED somewhere in there, we would go through first and we would find a safe path. And so the way that you would do that was primarily by recognizing choke points. So a good example of a choke point would be a bridge, would be a classic example of a choke point. Yeah. So there's a river. You have to get to the river in order to go across the river in order to go north. You're not going to swim across a river in 80 pounds of, 90 pounds of gear.
That guy's drowning.
So you have to use it. Yeah. So you have to use a bridge. Taliban knows we have to use a bridge. We know that they know that we know, it's one of those things. We know that they know that we know, right? So they're going to plant their IEDs around the bridge and the hope that we don't find them. And so every time we came to one of these choke points or any area that we were pretty sure there was going to be an IED in there, I would go through first and find a safe path. Yeah. And I would use the metal detector, swing it back and forth. And I don't want to get too complex with how it worked, but my metal detector, I would try and interpret its signals, its feedback that it was giving me. I try and interpret that and determine whether or not I should go down and investigate a metal signature. And I would do that using my hand. So you just move the dirt in front of it. And I can go into a really detailed, step by step. Okay. So, all right. So you get up to the bridge, and the whole squad, the patrol, will stop about 150, maybe 50 yards or so short of the bridge. The reason they do that is because if I step on something, then we don't want anybody else to get injured. So I'm kind of out there by myself. They would cover for me, cover and move. And so I would start waving my metal detector back and forth in front of me. And what I'm trying to do is cover a perfect rectangle up to the bridge with my metal detector. So I'm going like that, up, like that kind of a pattern to make sure I'm covering every square inch.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So straight across, up 6 inches, straight across, up 6 inches, straight across. And what I'm trying to do is balance safety and expediency. So if I went all the way towards safety, I would be just digging up the entire area, and it would take forever. We'd never get any missions done. If I went full expediency, I'd just be walking across, and people would be stepping on IEDs. So I'm trying to balance all that to the right level in terms of how I'm interpreting the data. And we keeping in mind that we have to keep moving if we want to get our mission accomplished. And then I'm also having to figure out what the right sensitivity on the metal detector is, because there's minerals in the ground. And if you go too high on the sensitivity, then you're just picking up everything. You go too low on the sensitivity, then you're not going to pick up that single strand of copper wire because there's not that much metal in the ground. So you have to figure out what the right sensitivity is on your metal detector. It's another tricky thing. And a lot of the times there will be visual indicators as well. So you know that if you look at an area, you can sometimes you can kind of spot where it looks like somebody's been messing around with the dirt. And you can kind of go, okay, that might be an IED there, so I'm kind of aware of it. And so you're trying to find those things. Problem in Sangin was that the Taliban had been there for the longest time. They had control of the area. So any IED that they had buried had been buried, and then the sun just baked the ground, so the ground didn't really look all that different. It looked kind of same. And so what I would do is I'd move my metal detector back and forth like this, covering all that square inches. And then if I got a signal on the metal detector that I thought was worthy of investigation, I would stop. And what you would do is you try and find the center of the metal signature. So the way that you do that is you approach it from the right side and you wait for a specific tone. Doesn't matter what tone. You just wait for like beep, like that. And you mark it using a chem light usually is what we would use. So you'd put a chem light there. You'd approach it from the left and wait for that same tone. So you'd wait for beep, the same exact tone. Put a chem light on the edge of where the metal detector was. Approach it from the front, same tone. And then you put the chem light. And then I usually wouldn't, but you could approach it from the back side and do the same thing. And then then you have 2 chem lights on that side. You have 2 chem lights on this side. In the middle of both of those, that's the center of the metal signature. So theoretically, that would be the center of a mine. That would be the center of an IED, a center of a battery, center of a shell casing, whatever it is. That's the center of the metal hip, the metal signature. And then from there, I would kneel down and start using my hand to very gently move the dirt away. And I would move the dirt until I found whatever the metal signature was. And sometimes it was nothing. Sometimes it was just a shell casing or a piece of shrapnel or a piece of metal or whatever. If it was a pressure plate or something like that, you'd uncover it and, okay, yeah, that's an IED. And from that point, you can do whatever you want. You can call EOD. You can go around. You can uncover it if you want. It just depends on what your mission parameters are if you have the time. But once you find it, it's basically safe because you can avoid it. You know where it is. And then you continue on from there.
That's crazy. To me, what you just said, you're basically safe. You just avoid it.
You just don't step on it.
Okay.
It's a unique way of looking at IEDs for sure. But knowing that as long as I don't step on this thing, it's probably not going to... I mean, could it potentially go off? Yeah, because those explosives are extremely volatile.
Yeah.
But for all intents and purposes, you're pretty safe as long as you don't touch it.
Okay.
Or don't go around it.
So how much of this were you doing in Afghanistan?
I was doing a lot of looking. I didn't do much finding of actual IEDs. I did tons of looking.
Lots of fishing, not catching?
Yeah, lots of fishing, not catching, luckily for me. And, yeah. I mean, but most times we went out, I would do several searches because there's choke points all over the place.
Yeah.
Wow. And luckily for me, I didn't have to deal, I think, with any. I don't think I found one until I stepped on it, which is kind of embarrassing to admit as a combat engineer. But that's how it is.
Yeah. Okay. So
that's how you find an IED. Yeah. So that's how you find an IED.
That's impressive.
And then so I told you we talk about proofing the lane. So what you're doing with the metal detector, that's called clearing the lane. So what that is, the lane is the route that you're walking on.
Yes.
Obviously. And clearing the lane would mean you are doing everything you can to be able to declare that there's no IEDs at this exact spot without actually having to touch it. And then what you do is you step onto that spot with your foot. And that's called proofing the lane. You're proving that it's clear by actually stepping on it. And that's basically the IED finding read back. Oh my gosh. You're doing a read back with that work that you just did by stepping on it, and then the ground tells you whether or not there's an IED there. So kind of a violent way to do a read back. Ideally, you wouldn't have to do that, but that's unavoidable when you're trying to find IEDs, when you're trying to find a safe path. Yeah, you got to do it.
That's part
Somebody has to do it.
Yeah.
And it's got to be you. And then so as I went through, I would mark my path with chem lights because the only thing that I'm proving is that where I stepped there, where I stepped there, where I stepped there doesn't have an IED. That doesn't mean that 2 inches to the left, 2 inches to the right of where I stepped could very well have one. Even though I cleared it and I stepped 2 inches to the left, there could be literally an IED that far away. And as long as you don't, the only way that you know that you're safe, if you're following me, is if you step exactly where I stepped.
And a chem light is just like
it's like a glow stick.
It's a glow stick, yeah.
Military glow stick, yeah. And I wouldn't crack it. I would just put it on the ground because then I'd go back and pick them up.
Okay.
And so that day, We were doing all sorts of. We were basically doing pushes into Taliban territory.
This is all daytime operations?
We did some nighttime stuff, not tons.
That's got to be crazy doing your job at nighttime.
Yeah, it's not really advisable. I mean, especially with the NVT. We didn't have the fancy Navy SEAL, binocular or whatever you guys have for.
I
you
never
have like
used,
60. You have
I never used
freaking
those.
spider eyes.
Bro, you
They look like they're in an optometrist chair, just like walking around.
Put a helmet on it. It's like ocular everywhere. No, we didn't have it. What did you have the monocular?
Yes.
Oh,
And
okay.
then the binoculars.
So you know
as
what
well.
it's like.
Yeah, we had
Doing it with a binocular?
15s and 18s.
Yeah. So we
I
would
couldn't
try and
imagine with the
avoid.
binocular, no.
We didn't do. I mean, any sweep that you did was basically you weren't clearing. You were just walking and seeing if you step on something. It's pretty hard, especially
sounds
on
like
the
it.
terrain because in the the waffle fields that
Yes.
it's freaking.
Unreal.
How could you? Yeah, you can barely walk, let alone look for IDs. So that day we were doing daytime pushes where we would basically walk to the north, and when the Taliban started shooting at us, we would shoot back and kill them, or they would run away, and we would just keep walking north, and we'd take over compounds, set them up as patrol bases, or sleep there, and then just keep moving north.
Yeah.
And so July 22nd of 2010 was the day. We were just doing another one of those pushes. There was a big column of vehicles that was going north. That was our supply train and providing support. And I was with a squad that was kind of on the outskirts of that vehicle column. And we were providing security, looking out for ambushes and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And we just spent the morning walking. I would do some sweeps. There would be nothing there. Keep going forward. And then eventually we took a knee around 1 o'clock, noon, something like that. Mm-hmm. And we took a knee to take a break. Platoon leadership had a quick meeting, and we stood up to continue going forward. And 2 seconds later, we all heard a loud pop noise. And I think everybody immediately knew that an IED had been stepped on. Very luckily, the IED that got stepped on by our point man did not function correctly. The blasting cap exploded. That's it.
Whoa.
Yeah. So very lucky. And the thing that happens with these homemade explosives is they're not military grade. So there's a lot of stuff that can get into the explosive mixture that could make it not work anymore, not work correctly. There's a lot of stuff that can happen to it. And so for whatever reason, that IED didn't work. And obviously he was very scared. And at that point, we essentially were in a minefield because, as you know, and anybody that's been there knows, where there's one IED, there's two, there's three, there's probably four.
Yeah.
And so that now became an area where there was a high likelihood there was going to be an IED. And the reason that they did that was because of that natural tendency that we have with when we talk about prioritize and execute, that when your buddy gets hit by an IED, he's screaming, he's going to die very soon because he's probably going to bleed out, and your emotions and everything in your body is telling you to go to him.
Yeah.
And that's what you want to do. And so they saw that happen over and over and over again. So they saw, every time somebody steps on an IED, all of his buddies run over there and help him. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to put clusters of them so that when this guy gets hit, everybody that goes to help him also gets hit. So maximum casualties for us. Yeah. And of course, we saw that start to happen, and we learned and we knew better, and we trained to when somebody stepped on IED, you don't go to them immediately, even though every cell in your body is telling you to.
Yeah.
Instead, you wait for somebody to come and clear a safe path to that person, so then you know how you can approach, you get them taken care of, and then you take them out. So that's what I was working on doing. I stepped forward in order to do my job, find a safe. I got to Hernandez's name, and he was able to get out of there. And then I had to guide us through that area. And so I just started trying to find a safe path out. And I was doing that process that I told you about. And 1 second I'm doing this, and the next second I'm on my back screaming.
Holy cow, man.
It's like I was teleported. I was probably unconscious for about 20 seconds-ish.
All right, so you come to, what's the first thing you're thinking?
I wouldn't say, okay, so the first thing I'm thinking didn't really come for about a minute and a half or so. First thing I remember experiencing
Yeah, that's a better phrase.
was screaming. And it's kind of movies do a pretty good job of that, of recreating that. It's just that kind of a, if you just open your mouth as wide as you could and just projected as hard as you possibly could, and the voice is cracking and squealing and all that stuff, very high pitched, that kind of a scream, like that kind of
Like
uncontrollable, like a
like
baby. If a baby was an adult, you know what I mean? You know how when the baby is completely beside itself screaming, if that was coming out of an adult.
And you had no control over this.
No control. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And you know how as a man, as an adult, when something hurts you, like you try and prevent yourself from reacting to it. There was no amount of self-control that could prevent me from screaming. So
this is what brought you back into consciousness.
That's how I was welcomed. Yeah, I don't know if that's what brought me in. I mean, I woke up and that's what my body automatically started doing. And I say my body because I wasn't telling it to do that. It was completely, my conscious mind was completely compartmentalized into this very small little space. I was experiencing it, but I wasn't telling my body to do anything. Yeah. And I remember tunnel vision, and I could see the sky above me, and I just remember probably about 30 seconds of scream, breath, scream, breath, scream, breath, and then eventually, and then slowly more and more senses started to come back. I think the next thing I remember is the smell, dust. Dust filled my nostrils, filled my mouth, and that distinct chemical stench of a explosion when you're close to a recent explosion. There's this kind of chemical. Yep. It doesn't smell like anything else. It just smells like an explosion. So I remember smelling that plus the dust, just kind of filled my olfactory senses. And then next sense that came back was feeling in my legs. And there wasn't so much feeling in the legs. You know how when you put your arm up over your head, you fall asleep on your arm? Yeah. And then it falls asleep, but it's been such a long time it kind of hurts. Yep. It was like that, except magnified by, 100.
They call that phantom pain now?
Or no, that wouldn't be phantom pain. Okay, phantom pain is something else.
Yeah, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that kind of dead arm feeling, but like extremely powerful numbness is what I would call it. And so it didn't really hurt in the same way as if you slit your arm or if you got shot somewhere. But it was this very powerful numbness that I felt in my legs. So at that point, that's when some semblance of conscious thought came into play. I just kind of intrinsically knew that my legs were blown off at some level. I didn't know how far. And then I did the natural systems check where I guess the endorphins by that point got into my bloodstream and I calmed down a little bit. I wasn't screaming anymore. And I brought my hands up. I looked at my hands and I saw I had all 10 fingers. So I was like, good. And then I reached my hand down in between my legs, as most men would probably want to do. And I couldn't feel anything because everything was numb down there. So I just couldn't feel anything. Mm-hmm. And so I assumed that my organs down there were gone. And then I remember hearing my buddies, this guy Otwell and this guy Johnson, screaming to me that we're coming for you. We're going to come and we're going to get you. But obviously they had to wait for somebody to come in, for another engineer to come over and find a safe path. Okay, great. So
even though the path that you'd taken from that point to get there had been safe, I
don't know. I don't exactly know. Maybe he probably just came over and quickly rechecked it or something.
I'm just curious. I didn't know what the SOP
That's a good point.
Is.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't actually know what path he used. I just know that they brought over another engineer.
Got it. Well, I mean, I don't blame them.
Yeah,
either.
That's a good idea. That's probably would have been a good.
How far were you from the site of like where you stepped on it? Because that may have been another thing too, is that you're not in the same location.
Yeah, I probably did get launched a little bit. I don't know how far. I remember some guys told me I probably went 5 or 6 feet in the air. So yeah, I probably landed somewhere else. You're right. Yeah, that's a good point. So I heard them, Jones, we're coming. And then eventually they got to me, and they put tourniquets on. And then eventually the corpsman got over to me, gave me a shot of morphine, and that's when I kind of relaxed a little bit more. And then I was able to start asking about, down there. And I said, I think it's gone. And they said, it's fine. Yeah. And they said, you want me to touch it? And I was like, no. And I laughed. I was like, okay, all right, fine. And then at that point,
you gotta love the sense of humor in the military, or just, specific. Definitely, that's military humor.
Yeah.
And then at that point, unfortunately, it didn't stay so fun. But at that point, I started thinking about my future. For whatever reason, I never thought I was going to die. Okay. I assumed I was going to live, probably because I knew that my friends were there. I knew about tourniquets. I knew tourniquets would basically save your life, and so I just had a feeling I wasn't going to die. I was going to live. And so I started thinking about what future was going to be like for me, and I figured, all right, well, I'm not going to be able to work out. I'm going to have to leave the Marine Corps. I'm going to be in a wheelchair forever. My mom's going to have to take care of me like I'm a baby again. I didn't know, very ignorant outlook on what life is like as a double above knee amputee.
Yeah, but at that moment, dude,
I
think what you're thinking is completely normal.
Yeah, I'm high on morphine too.
Right.
Oh,
I don't know anything about life as a disabled person,
or the extent of your injuries. At this point.
I didn't know. Yeah, they had told me that my legs were below the knee at that point. So my buddies, I asked them, I said, is it above the knee or below the knee? And they said below.
Really?
We'll get to that. I asked. Because it's weird, because I had kind of decided before this deployment that if I stepped on an IED, as I knew it would happen, if my amputations were below the knee, I was like, I can live with that. But if they're above the knee, then I think I'd probably just rather be dead. And so that's what came into play here. They said below the knee, and for whatever reason, I still just said, I'm done. Just finish me off, man.
Oh, you were asking your buddies again?
Yeah, I said, just kill me. Just put a bullet through my head. And
how did they react when you said that?
They just said no.
Well, obviously, I know they said no.
They were just, no way, man. You're not. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to do that. And they said, no, you're going to be fine. You're going to be good. We're going to get you out of here. They're not. Yeah, and they're not going to say anything different. You never would.
Yeah.
You're right. Your life's going to suck.
Imagine the dude pulls out his pistol. He's like,
yeah. But here's the thing. Wait. No. Yeah. So they get me on a stretcher. They carry me to a tank. I'm still asking everybody that walks by and comes to look at me like, Bill, good win, shoot me. And nobody's doing it, of course. And then they get me to a tank, put me in the back of that tank, and the last thing I remember is just seeing the faces of these tankers just looking down at me. And then the corpsman gave me another shot, and I went unconscious again. And the next time I woke up is 2 days later in Germany.
Wow.
So medically induced coma for 2 days?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that would that count as a. I don't know if I was in a medically induced coma, or maybe if I just don't remember ever being conscious.
I just wonder.
That's a good question.
Body could have been in shock.
I mean, I probably was just anesthetized for the vast majority of that time, because they would have had to do emergency surgeries on me. Mm-hmm. So they probably just. I don't know if it would qualify as a medically induced coma, as much as they just kept me very, very, very sedated.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I'd have to ask a doctor on that one.
That's unreal.
So at that point, that's when my legs became above the knee. And the reason for that is infections get in there.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the reasoning was for them to revise my amputations above the knee. But one thing is infections, so that sometimes they just have to do it to save your life.
Yep.
And second is the orthopedic surgeons, they are thinking long-term about what they are assuming that you're going to want one of prosthetics. And so they look at your injury, and they kind of have to make a judgment call about whether or not this limb is going to be able to hold a prosthetic on it. And so it could just be that I barely had any leg below the knee, and so they said there's no way that we could put a prosthetic on this, so we're just going to amputate it a little bit higher.
Prioritize and execute.
Yeah.
What's the best option at
exactly.
that time?
Yeah, highest priority, yeah.
That's gnarly that they have to be the ones that are making that decision on.
Yeah, they're making that on your behalf, man.
They're making it on your behalf for your well-being long term.
And there's no like little thing on your dog tag, organ donor check. Don't amputate above the, whatever.
Yeah,
there's no way that
they're not calling home to be like, hey, so you're the next of kin. How much of his leg do you think he wants?
Yeah,
saved?
There's no such thing as that. They just have to make a judgment call.
Wow.
Okay. So you wake up.
Them.
Yeah. So you wake up in Germany, you said?
Next time I woke up is in Germany, very briefly,
Yeah.
and this is where we get into the story I tell at muster.
Yeah.
Where at that point I've now accepted I'm not dead. I'm gonna live.
None of my friends will kill me.
None of my friends will kill me. I asked one more time. None of my friends will kill me.
You have bad. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna live. I'm alive now.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't remember having a conscious thought about it, where I had a conscious thought about it, but my thoughts immediately at that point went to my mom and about how she was going to be destroyed by when she heard the news. She probably had already heard it. And in a very, scary way. She had Marines in dress blues show up to her door. So she probably thought I was dead. And then I don't know how it all went down. I don't really talk to her about it. I think she's still kind of, it upsets her a lot to remember. But at some point they obviously told her that I wasn't dead. But so that was a incredibly difficult thing for her to go through, obviously. But then the relief of hearing that I wasn't dead, it was only, an amputee. But my thoughts, I think it was just this primal feeling in my psyche that made me think my mom's going to be crushed when she hears what happened.
Yeah.
And so that funny side of me came out, and obviously completely out of it on Dilaudid, I just turned to my nurse and I asked her to try and can you find me a funny hat or something? And she was like, what? And she said, sure, I'll try to find a funny hat for you. But now you got to go back to sleep because we're going to transport you soon. So she made me go unconscious again. And then, and my thought process was that if I had a funny hat on for when I got home, my mom would laugh and she'd feel better. And so they couldn't find a funny hat. But the next memory I have is very, very vague memories of being loaded onto, a C-130 or a C-17 or some sort of medical plane. And I remember I was maybe awake for 5 seconds. I just have a memory of it. And then next time I wake up after that is when they were unloading me out of the ambulance at Bethesda Naval Hospital. So they would have these basically a half a tractor trailer size ambulances, mobile hospitals basically, and they would transport you from wherever, I guess Andrews, I don't know, whatever Air Force base is there where they fly you in, and then to the Bethesda Naval Hospital. And then they would tell your family this is when he's going to arrive. So they'd be at the entrance of Walter Reed, at Bethesda Naval Hospital. They'd be at that entrance right there. And then the ambulance would pull in. They'd unload you, and then your family could say hi. So that's the next memory I have is coming out of there. My mom's there. My stepdad's there. My dad, my stepmom are all there. My little brother. And they're just, as they're wheeling me by, they don't stop, to do anything. As they wheel by, they're just saying, we're here, we're here, we're here. And then they took me in for surgery. And I don't remember this, but I think my mom tells me that I told her that I tried to find a funny hat for her.
Okay.
And they couldn't find one. And then they whisked me away to surgery.
Yeah.
And the next week after that was going in for surgery every day.
How many surgeries in a row did you have?
I think I went in for surgery all 7 days. They were doing debridements. Maybe it might not be all 7, but the vast majority of that 7 days I was in the intensive care unit. I was going in for surgeries, and it really wasn't pleasant because I was having a bad hallucinogenic reaction to the anesthesia.
Yeah.
So I would go in for surgery, and then I would have these really vivid nightmares. One nightmare was I was in a bunker, and I could see my legs were splattered all over the bunker, and my mom was cradling me, and I was screaming. So that was one of them. Another one was I was going on patrol with my buddies in Iraq, and I got shot in the neck, and everybody just left without me. Those are the only 2 that I remember, but it was a lot of hallucinating, seeing ants all over my body, just things like that, a lot of hallucinating. But also during that time period, my mom got given a pirate hat to give to me, and she gave me that pirate hat, and there's all sorts of pictures of me with that little pirate hat, and so it was kind of a jolly old time when I was awake. We were I was trying to make people laugh and make people feel better again.
Yeah.
And so
That's crazy.
So that first week was rough, and I spent a lot of the time. I had the breathing mask on, tubes coming out all over my body. I spent a lot of time with ice packs all over me, because I remember I would wake up and I'd feel really hot.
Yeah.
And then they'd put ice packs on my body, so I was fighting off fevers and I was fighting off these infections. And
Good Lord. That's crazy.
my mom was brushing my teeth. I was, essentially helpless.
Because of how medicated you were.
Yeah, how medicated, eating through a tube. I just had a feeding tube, and then that's one kind of unpleasant memory I have is them taking the feeding tube out.
Ooh. Was it going through your nose or in your mouth?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any pictures of me with it in. I just remember gagging a lot, like being blacked out, but just like gagging while they took it out, and they're like, "Throw up, yeah, throw up." And they're encouraging me to throw up
to help with the movement of it.
Yeah.
Being pulled
Yeah.
out. That's horrible.
And so that was not a pleasant memory to have, but spent about a week there. Went up to the post-surgical ward for another month.
What was that month like? What was your routine?
The routine, so that month was surgeries every 2-3 days, where they would do debridements, and they were just trying to get the stump. So I had these wound vac machines, where there was tubes coming out, and they would be just pulling the excess fluids, pus and blood and all that stuff. They'd be pumping that out. Doctors would come in at around 4:00 in the morning, do their rounds, check on me. I had a catheter in, just tubes coming out all over the place. I had a colostomy bag for about 3 months, so I had a colostomy bag right here because I had a lot of shrapnel wounds to my buttocks, and they didn't want to risk infections or anything. And plus, to get out of bed like that and go poop,
zero.
they just nothing happened to my bowels. They just diverted my.
Thank goodness they did. Think about like the thought process behind that. It's like, hey, like the guy doesn't need one, but he needs one.
Yeah.
Like,
There's nothing wrong with it.
This is actually very important. There's nothing wrong with this system. However, we're going to add this to make him a little more comfortable, to lower the risk of infection.
And unfortunately,
that's incredible.
Yeah, unfortunately, they had to learn that through experience.
I know. I was just
a lot of guys
that
had to come through before they went, we should just do that as standard.
Yeah.
So at that point, my daily routine, or most of my routine, was I'd wake up, have breakfast, they would give me these 2 protein milkshakes that every now and then, I actually feel a little bit reminiscent for that time, that first month in the hospital, because I had my little pain button. I could push every 5 minutes, get a little dilaudid. I could lay there and drink milkshakes all day. It was kind of nice.
I know we'll get to it later, naturally, but if we don't, I just want you to think about this. Just what you just said. Like you had the little every 5 minutes you could have that dilaudid. That's an addicting.
Oh yeah.
Feeling. I was up at immersion camp the last 2 weeks. We did the regular Jiu-Jitsu camp, and then we did one just for LEO.
Yeah.
And my buddy Justin Dodge came on the tail end of the first one, and then to help out with the first one. And he's a full-time SWAT team member.
Yeah.
He's the only guy to ever go back to full-time SWAT with an amputated leg.
Yeah, yeah.
And his story is crazy.
Jesse was telling me about him.
Yeah.
He got his foot run over by the
fire truck.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just crazy, his story. But he talked about how he was very conscious about him being able to come back to being functional at a high level, is he had to be off of painkillers. And so he's doing just an incredible amount of like ice therapy and ice baths and just doing that. So we can talk about it now or later. Like, what was it like getting off of painkillers?
I'll be honest with you, man. No big deal for me.
Wow.
I didn't.
That's awesome.
And I'll be honest with you, when they give you a bolus of Dilaudid, it feels good.
Yeah.
You can smell it in your nose. You can just smell this kind of alcohol. You can just inhale it. Opens your nostrils. It feels good. It feels really good. All the pain goes away.
Yeah.
It feels so good. And then they eventually set me up with the pain button, and I could only hit it every 5 minutes. And I would still be kind of out of it though the first week, and they would come in. And what I would do is I would kind of pass out, and I would wake up and I'd push it because I was afraid. I was afraid that was going to hurt.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know how long I'd been asleep. So I pushed the button really quick, And they'd come in, they'd be like, you realize you can only push this thing every 5 minutes, right? And I was like, yeah, every 5 minutes. They went, you probably pushed it about 130 times in the last hour. Because I just, and I would push it. But yeah, it feels good. But eventually, at the end of that month, the pain was subsiding. They took that pain button away, and they gave me oxycodone, 10 milligrams. And they said, yeah, just take this as needed for pain. And I kept that prescription for 4 months, and I kept taking it. And eventually, I got to a point where I was going, I'm not really feeling any pain. I don't need to take these anymore. And I went to my doctor, and I said, can I stop taking these? And he said, do you have any pain? I said, no. He said, yeah, just stop taking them. And I stopped taking them.
That is unreal. That you know that is not common.
I don't know. I don't know what the percentage is. I'd have to ask everybody else that I was in the hospital with whether or not they struggle with it. But I personally did not have any issue. I don't know why. But I think probably because I had such a strong sense of purpose by the time I came off of it.
Got it.
That it didn't bother me. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't on a high dosage either. I think 10 milligrams of oxycodone is probably a pretty low dosage. I don't know if you know, but it seems like that's a pretty low dosage of oxycodone.
Interesting.
But yeah, for that first month, it was like that. And I wake up in the morning and drink my milkshakes, have my breakfast, and then most of the time after that, I would watch Seinfeld because my grandma had brought me the greatest gift I had ever received. She brought me the entire box, all the seasons of Seinfeld.
That's amazing.
And what I would do is I would get my breakfast and I'd call the corpsman in and I'd go, hey, can you turn on my TV and turn on my Seinfeld? And they'd come in and they'd set the TV up and turn on my Seinfeld. And I'd watch my Seinfeld while I ate my breakfast. I'd watch an entire DVD of them. And then after that would be usually when my physical therapist would come. And we would just it started with just lifting my stumps off the bed. 10 times, 3 sets. That was it. Just lifting my stumps off the bed. And that was exhausting and very painful. And then rolling over. So they would just start very gradually, more and more movement. Eventually I could get out of the wheelchair. Eventually I was able to get out of the wheelchair by myself. And then I could go for rolls around the hospital. And then they would take me down to the clinic. And I saw a pull-up bar in their closet one time. And I said, I want to do some pull-ups. So I did. I set the clinic record for pull-ups.
What was that?
I think maybe 18.
Nice.
And I think somebody beat me later on. But I think I was probably the first amputee that came through there and wanted to do a max set of pull-ups. So I had the record by my default.
It's a good way to get it.
I'll take it.
Hey, a record's a record.
A record's a record, man. Baby.
Like my buddy Jordan Merritt, he has a world record for the first person ever to run a marathon on a gas and oil platform.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how awesome is that? If you think about that, you're on this little helicopter pad, running a marathon up there.
That's brutal. That's mind-numbing, man.
You know how he did it? No music either.
Ooh.
No headphones, nothing. Just
even more
boom,
hardcore.
Just knocked it out.
Did you know that? Have you heard of the race to survive? No, not race to survive.
Last man standing races?
No, it's race to become or something like that. Anyway, it's 3,100 miles. Around a single block in New York. And it's like the time limit's something like 54 days or something like that. Yeah. Race to, it's like something.
So it's the same, you just do the same block.
Same block. I think it's 3,100 miles, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
And it takes, you have to run 51 miles a day or something.
That sounds like a good thing for Andrew Paul to try. That needs to be his next challenge.
Yeah, if he was really tough, that's what he would do.
Yeah, that's exactly. If he was really committed to running,
dude,
like he says
and there's people that do it every year, so it's brutal.
Crazy.
That's kind of a cross-country trek for him, though.
Yeah, I think I'd rather run across the country than run around the same. But the challenge in it is that you're doing that mundane, same thing for that long.
I'm trying to find the details of this.
There's a Netflix documentary about it, I think. It's called Race to something or Run to something.
Run to Madness is what it sounds like.
Something like that. Yeah,
that sounds terrible.
Like Race to Become or Run to Become or something like that. I forget the name of it.
My buddy did 330 plus loops on a 0.08 mile helipad.
No music too. That's rough, man. But
And that
How
was
many-
after,
how many
that
loops
was
was it?
after that was after his 12-hour work shift.
And then he went to the next another work shift.
Probably
How many
Well,
loops was it? 300 some.
over 300.
Okay, that's countable.
Yes.
So that's probably what you're doing. Is like one.
He goes just raw
2.
dogged a full marathon on an oil platform, 0.08 mile helipad,
Dang.
328 loops, no headphones or music, Gulf of Mexico heat and humidity. 70% of it was done in the dark, 26.2 miles.
Nice, man. That's awesome. Good for him.
I just think that's incredible.
That's hardcore, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty awesome.
But yeah, so I guess you just count down chunks. Just count down from 300 or 300 and whatever, 350.
Yeah,
And you just keep that in your mind. All right, 349.
yeah. He had
348.
obviously his Garmin watch and then Strava.
Yeah.
Is what he did. But anyways, I just think it's awesome. Like you have people that just go out there and do insane
Just do
things.
something hard, man. Yeah.
And but we went down that rabbit hole because you said like, well, nobody had done that before. But what's cool is you inspired somebody else to.
Yeah, it became a thing.
It became a
thing in the clinic.
And you know what's going to become a thing? Helicopter pad marathons.
Helicopter pad marathons. Yeah, man.
You can make excuses or you make things happen. You can't do both.
That's
And
exactly
Jordan,
right.
and
Who can run
that's
the
how you
fastest?
live your life. Is you
Yeah.
don't make excuses. I know your big thing is put your legs on.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, I'm sorry. We're starting to get off path a little bit, but so you're there for a month. You're
There for
talking
a
about
month.
your routine.
Last surgery.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was basically the routine. Physical therapy, most days, drinking milkshakes, healing. That's all I was there to do, is heal. And that's when phantom pain came into play. So phantom pain,
Okay.
as you know, is when phantom sensations when you feel your legs. So right now
Okay.
I feel my legs, they tingle. My
Yeah.
feet tingle right now.
Your feet are tingling.
My feet tingle right now. I can feel them. I can feel that they're there. I can act.
Like, are you wiggling
I
your
can
toes?
send I can send a signal from my brain to my feet that, and I can feel them kind of flexing right now. If I do that,
That's
that signal is
bizarre,
there.
dude.
Phantom pain is when there's pain in the limb that doesn't exist.
So like if
this
you
stuff creeps me out. Like I don't.
It's wild, man.
like if you trip or if you like kick something in the house, do you feel like you stubbed your toe? Is it something?
No, I don't
like-
feel that.
I'm trying to just figure out like what triggers the phantom pain.
No, I've
I don't think
accidentally
anybody
played
knows,
footsies
man.
with him a few times, and he
Oh,
had
yeah?
zero. Like
No, I can. If you kick it
awareness.
enough, I can feel it like that. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't feel it down there.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really knows exactly. I think it's some sort of electrical misfiring from the brain. That's the theory, but I've never heard anything that is concrete. This is what it is.
Do you still experience phantom pains occasionally?
Yeah. It's from time to time. Itching, a lot of itching,
That would be
throbbing,
terrible.
like kind of a electrical pulse, like if you got shocked, like that kind of pulse.
Is there
Stabbing
anything
sometimes.
that you can do to stop that or counter it?
I don't think so. I've tried drinking pickle juice before. The phantom pain I have it doesn't last long enough, and it's not bad enough that it really becomes an issue for me.
Okay.
The only time every twice a year or something, I might have a night where it's just going off all night and it keeps me up. Other people, it's all the time. So it really just depends. I think it probably depends on how bad your injury was. I would guess that people that have higher levels of amputation probably have worse phantom pain. And so the one thing that I've tried to do is drink pickle juice, because pickle juice is supposed to cure your cramps. Mm-hmm. So I figured maybe it's a similar mechanism. So if anybody is out there that's an amputee that wants to try that, let me know. I've tried it, but my phantom pain doesn't last long enough that I can really test it out reliably.
Interesting.
So try pickle juice, everybody.
Okay.
See if it works, and report back to JP and Lucas.
Yeah, it's delicious just anyway.
Yeah, I like pickle juice.
I'm a
It's
big
good-
fan of
it's
pickle
good
juice.
stuff.
Yep.
I'll just
It works for cramps.
I'll just drink
Yeah,
a
it does.
Jocko Hydrate.
Yeah, Jocko Hydrate.
I'd
I
rather
think
do
it's
that.
something about the shock to your palate that supposedly cures the
Well,
the
and
cramp.
it's the vinegar is such a good delivery system for the salt.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, because
Okay.
the other thing that people say to do is mustard, which is basically
Mustard.
just sodium and vinegar.
No.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, I'll try that next time.
If given the option, I do pickle juice over mustard every time.
Can I put the
Pure-
mustard on?
what
a
kind
hot
of
dog?
mustard though?
It's
Yellow
got to be
mustard?
like that yellow mustard.
Okay,
Yep.
like Heinz yellow mustard that you put on a hot dog. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd probably do pickle juice.
Depends on the pickle juice. Like I only like zesty dill pickles. Those are
Zesty.
the only ones I'll eat.
Okay. All
They
right.
don't really make them anymore. which is sad.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
You are very zesty.
All right. So, Rob, you're there for a month.
So
and
yeah,
then
there for a month
last surgery-
healing. Last surgery was a skin graft from my front of my left thigh to the inside of my right thigh. Closed up a wound. Waited long enough that the doctors said, okay, the skin grafts look good. Then I got transferred over to Walter Reed Army Medical Center in D.C. to begin physical therapy in earnest. The legs part, and that was a year and a half. I don't know how much I could probably go on for 8 podcasts about going into all the different stuff that happened in physical therapy.
Yeah.
And then we have a lot of other stuff that we want to talk about too. So I don't know how much detail you want to go into.
I mean, overall, what were some takeaways that you applied to your life that you learned in physical therapy?
Okay, one of my very first takeaways, I think my first day or maybe my first couple days, I remember I rolled my wheelchair into physical therapy, into the clinic, and my dad was with me. Because he was living with me as my non-medical caretaker. He's just kind of a person that was living with me just in case something happened. And roll into the clinic, probably 100 amputees all in there doing physical therapy with medicine balls and on mat tables and working out and running and cycling and doing all this stuff. And I remember I looked to my right and I saw a guy come in from a door down there. And I immediately saw this guy was a double above knee amputee. He was like me, except he wasn't in a wheelchair. He was walking on 2 prosthetic legs. And he walked in. I remember he seemed really confident. He didn't have anybody with him. He was by himself. He was independent. He had a big backpack on, put his backpack down. He started working out just like any normal person. And I just sat there, and I was just sat there looking at him, watching him like, this is incredible. Because that's what I wanted to be able to do. At that point, I didn't know what was possible. All the nurses told me, you're going to be able to do this and that, but I'd never seen it.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that was going to be possible for me. And I just watched this guy. And my physical therapist came over and she said, that's Dan. He's kind of the star pupil in the clinic. And I went, I just kept watching him. And she said, but, if you work hard, that can be you someday. And that was Dan Knassen, who I think you probably know.
I went through buds with Dan.
You went through it, so you know how badass he is. And
did he beat your pull-up record?
No, the person that beat my pull-up record came after me, and so Dan had been there for a year.
So Dan didn't know about it?
No, he didn't know about it. So
he was a pull-up machine.
I've seen videos. He could do a lot
He
of
did
pull-ups.
like over 40, I think, when we were in buds.
Yeah, but strict.
Yes.
Yeah.
Over 40 strict pull-ups.
Yeah.
Dan Knassen is,
He's hardcore, and so
very
he was
similar to Rob. Very, very disciplined, very hardcore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the lesson there is whenever you're going through something difficult, it's important to have somebody that you want to be like. Somebody that has the skills, the attitude that you want to have. And they can show you how to do it. And you can do that with somebody that you know, like you and me. We know each other. I want to be like you. You probably want to be like me in some ways. So we have that with each other.
Yep.
And you can also do that just with stories. Like the guys at World War II, at the Battle of Peleliu, I wanted to be like those Marines. And they showed me how I could be.
That was the purpose of us doing this podcast, is to share stories like yours so that somebody who will never be able to meet you, or just because they live across the world or chance, right? They'll never be able to sit down and talk with you and hear these stories. They now can.
Yeah.
As they're driving into their job or driving home from work or, headed to the gym to go work out, and they're just unmotivated to go do their workout. And they hear about you running 31 marathons. They're like, you know what? I'm not going to complain about these things anymore.
Yeah, and that was the genesis of the month of marathons, was trying to tell a story that people could use in that same way. And yeah, sure, there's not going to be that many double above knee amputees, or there are a lot of double above knee amputees, but there's going to be a lot more people that can see that kind of a thing and say to themselves, maybe I'm not in those circumstances, but if this person, who's a human being, I'm a human being, if this person can do that, something like that, then maybe, just maybe, it's possible for me to do this thing that I'm trying to do. Because we're both human beings. We both are kind of on that similar playing field. And so I didn't know for sure that I was going to be able to do what Dan did, because he was doing some cool stuff. But at least I saw we're both human beings. We're both in the military. We're both double above the amputees. So maybe it's possible, if everything goes well enough, that I could do at least some portion of what he can do.
But you knew you had to put in the work.
Yeah.
You knew there was going to be
I knew that was going to require a lot of work, yeah.
Okay.
And that's what physical therapy was. I mean, I started for an hour a day, just an hour, doing exercises. And then over time, as my body got stronger and stronger, I was able to put my first prosthetics on my legs, and started in just shorties, which is what.
Yeah.
They're not my jiu-jitsu legs, not the legs I wear at muster, but they're short. They have feet on them, so it's just a socket with the foot. Yeah.
You did those at one of the FTXs, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I have the short. I started in shorties. That's kind of where every double above knee amputee starts.
Yep.
And you're just walking back and forth in the parallel bars.
Wow.
Doing the classic,
Yep.
what you see in the movies. And you do that for a while until you're comfortable. And then they moved us out to this track that was on the outside of the clinic where there was a harness coming out from the bottom or from the top that would catch you if you fell. And so they kind of had that safety net for us. And so then when I was comfortable in the parallel bars, I went to a walker. And then when I was good with the walker, canes, then one cane, then no canes. And they made me taller and taller until eventually they gave me bionic knees, and then I learned how to run, learned how to ride a bike, and do all this other stuff.
You also did something pretty cool on a bike as well. What'd you do?
Yeah, so when I was learning how to ride a bike, again, it was another situation where Dan couldn't even do it. So the genesis of me wanting to learn how to ride a bike was I saw Dan on a stationary bike, and he was wearing these weird-looking prosthetics that I knew to be the cycling leg is what we called it. It's called the Bartlett tendon, and I wanted to be able to ride a bike again because it's something that I enjoy doing. And so I went up to Dan. I said, "Is that the cycling leg?" And he went, "Yeah, that's a cycling leg." And I asked him, "Can you ride a regular bicycle?" And he said, "No, we've been working on that, but we haven't been able to figure out how to make that happen." In fact, there was only one double above knee amputee that anybody knew could ride a bicycle, and his name was Rudy Garcia Tolson, and he was a double above knee amputee. He could ride a regular bicycle, and so we tried to model what we were doing after him, and we both tried until eventually the prosthetists and everybody figured out how they had to set the leg up so that we could do it. And then Dan learned how to ride, and I learned how to ride. And then Dan retired, and he went on to start doing biathlon training, which he was very successful at, gold medalist. And
a few times, right?
yeah, I think he's been to multiple Paralympics. I think he's got a couple gold medals.
Medalist.
Yeah.
I know that for sure.
Yeah, I think he got a gold medal in the second one. Anyway, I stayed. I still had a little while longer, and I kept learning, kept practicing. Finally figured out how to ride a regular bicycle with no help, and then put that to use. I did a couple triathlons when I was in the clinic. I did some running races, and that is the second part of this thing. Probably the main lesson I learned in physical therapy was that it's important to have somebody that you want to be like, and then later on when it's your turn, it's important to be somebody that other people would want to be like. And so that's why I wanted to do all that stuff. That's why every time the physical therapist asked me if I wanted to do a 5K or a triathlon or whatever, not only did I want to push myself and learn how to do these things and challenge myself, but I wanted to be somebody that other people in the clinic, I wanted to be Dan for somebody. And so that's why I pushed myself in that way.
Dude, that's incredible.
And then eventually retired.
Kanasa's got Winter Paralympics gold in 2018.
Yeah.
And in 2022. He also has silver medals in the 2018, 2 silvers in 2018. No.
I think you got a gold in 2022.
Yeah, he's got a gold in 2018, a gold in 2022 in the biathlon.
Yeah.
And then he's got 4 silvers and a bronze.
There you go.
Yep.
That's awesome.
So be like Dan, everybody.
Good grief.
Be like Dan and Rob. But you did something with a bicycle.
Oh, yeah.
Correct?
We were talking about the bicycle. So I learned how to ride a bicycle, and I had really gotten into endurance sports. Okay. It just fascinated me.
Yeah.
And so I always heard about Ironman triathlons and the Race Across America and all this stuff. And I think it just made this kind of off-the-cuff remark when I was working with my process trying to learn how to ride a bike, is that this is so hard, I should do something with it when I'm when I get out, so I should ride my bike across the country or something. And he was like, yeah, haha, funny. And I said the same thing. I just had the idea, and then I put it aside, not thinking it was really something I was going to do. And then after, when I was training for the Paralympics and all that stuff, I realized that the competitive sports wasn't really going to be fulfilling enough for me to want to keep doing it. And so I started thinking about something else I could do, and I came back to that idea of riding my bike across the country, and maybe I could raise money for veteran charities. And so started planning that. It was very, very low budget. I bought this U-Haul 17-foot box truck, used, probably had 250,000 miles on it or something like that. Needed new brakes. Didn't get new brakes, but it needed new brakes. I didn't get new brakes until I made it to San Francisco. And then finally, I was going to get on the Pacific Coast Highway, and I figured, I'll get some new brakes on this thing.
Yeah,
but
I'm thankful that you decided that.
yeah, I got my little brother who was 17 when we started. He was driving the truck. That was my support vehicle. We loaded it up with supplies, put a couple military cots in the back, sleeping bags, lined it with carpet, drove up to Bar Harbor, Maine, hopped on my bike. And the way that I found my route was I just went on, I found all these maps on Transamerica bike trip website or whatever, and I pieced them together so that I would go down the coast a little ways from Maine to Virginia, Virginia to San Francisco, and then San Francisco down the coast to San Diego. So I loaded those maps up into a bike GPS and just started riding, and didn't train for the bike ride specifically. I just got my prosthetics kind of where I knew that they worked, and I just figured, you know what, I could sit around here in Virginia and ride in circles until I felt like I could do the whole thing, or I could just start, and the first half of the bike ride is training for the second half. The Appalachian Mountains are training for the Rocky Mountains. That was kind of my attitude. And I started in October of...
That's how I ride my new bike.
Yeah, there you go. Just go, man. But look, there's a lesson there too, man. I mean, it's silly. It sounds silly, but there is a lesson because so many people get caught up preparing and getting ready and waiting till the conditions are perfect, until I'm absolutely ready. I'm positive I can do it. But that day hardly ever comes. Yep. Because you're never going to be at a position where you feel you're 100% certain that you can do anything. That's actually hard.
That's why being default aggressive to execute on things in life is important.
And taking iterative steps, ideally. Yes. But I guess my iterative steps were daily 30 miles. Yeah.
So every day you did 30 miles.
I was committing to it. But the good thing too was I didn't have a timeline. I didn't have to make it there at any point. So I knew if I needed to take a break, I was going to take a break. I would just, if I got to a point where I needed some rest, I would just rest.
Yeah.
And so I decided, all right, I'll start riding 30 miles a day down the coast of Maine. Started in October of 2013 because I had this I knew it was going to take, I calculated it was probably going to take me about 180 days. It took me 181. It's going to take me about 180 days to make it all the way across diagonally. And so I figured at some point I'm going to be riding in the wintertime, so I could either cross the Colorado Rockies in February, or I could be riding up in Maine in March. I figured, maybe I'll just do east to west. And the other part of the reason that I went east to west was because the prevailing winds are west to east, so I figured why not add another layer of difficulty and complexity. If I'm really trying to make it hard, might as well ride into the wind as well. And that's what I did. Rode 30 miles a day. I would usually keep an eye out for somewhere where I could park the truck. So I would keep an eye out. I'd go, okay, there's a good spot. I'd finish my 30 miles, pull over, load my bike into the back of the truck, and we'd drive to that spot. We'd park up. A lot of times it would be in a church or a fire station or whatever. We'd park up. Or in a hotel parking lot or something like that. We'd park. My brother would make us a little camping meal, and then we'd go to sleep, and we'd wake up the next morning and start again.
Dude.
And that would be the routine. It would just be day after day after day.
You slept in the back of there?
For the beginning. Luckily, my friend Tina was really good at negotiating with hotels to get us a free room.
Oh wow.
And so the vast majority of the nights we would actually sleep in a free hotel room.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Dude,
So that was
is
really cool.
awesome.
So she
Shout
would call
out to
ahead.
those hotels and
Yeah.
motels and
Yeah.
whatever it was.
DoubleTree by Hilton.
Yeah.
I will always be a fan. The last probably month of my ride, I stayed in so many DoubleTrees and gobbled down so many of their cookies that I actually gained weight probably in the bike ride.
Wow. So DoubleTree by Hilton stepped up.
DoubleTree
that
by
much.
Hilton. Yeah.
Nice.
They've put me up for probably a month straight. Every time. Well, maybe not a month straight, but every
No, I
time
know,
I
but
was
still.
in range of one, free room. And then they set me up with a diamond membership for the next couple years after I finished.
That's stellar.
DoubleTree
Dude.
by Hilton.
Yeah.
That makes me want to switch and do most of my stays with them.
Yeah, man. I always, and the cookies. I mean, be careful though. If anybody's trying to lose weight, do not stay in a DoubleTree.
Those fresh
They are
baked
delicious.
cookies, allegedly,
Allegedly.
are always at the counter.
Delicious.
Have their own little cookie.
Yeah.
Drawer.
They're a great hotel, however, comma.
The breakfast is
cookies.
good in the morning too.
Oh, dude. Oh. Yeah. You get
Yes.
bacon, eggs,
Yep.
just a pile of them. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
They're a great hotel.
Man, 181 days. That's incredible. Were there any moments in that journey that you're like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
No hesitation there at all. Just yes.
Believe it or not when I was crossing the Colorado Rockies. There was a couple days in the
I mean,
Rockies.
by then you've kind of conditioned yourself to be.
Yeah,
a
well,
machine.
the thing about the bike ride was I started it and I wanted to make it as hard as I could. And I wanted to raise money for charity, but I didn't want to tell anybody anything. I didn't want to do any interviews. I didn't want to tell people how to be. I just wanted to do what I was doing and just let everybody else figure it out. That was my
It's kind of hard to raise money though if you're not telling people.
exactly.
Okay.
So the main driving force of the bike ride was still to push myself and see what I was capable of. It was about me,
Yeah.
right? So it was about pushing myself. And there was this side objective of raising money, but I didn't really want to do I didn't want to put in the effort to that. Basically, I didn't want to be a leader yet. I wasn't ready to be a leader.
Okay.
So we're going to come back to that. And so as the ride grew and Tina got better and better at finding hotels and finding interviews for me and finding all these places where I could do meet and greets, I started to get frustrated because it was slowing me down. I wanted to start riding 40 miles and 50 miles a day and that kind of thing. So I started getting frustrated. And so by the time I got to the Colorado Rockies, I was crossing Monarch Pass, the tallest mountain on the ride. I was kind of fed up, and I had a meet and greet I was supposed to do. These people had spent a bunch of time, they were waiting for me. They were excited. They set up this meet and greet, and I said, I'm just not going. I can't do it. I'm too tired. And to my credit, I had blisters on my stumps. I went from 2,000 feet to 8,000 feet, so I was super tired. And it was all legitimate, but I bailed on them. And that was the only time I bailed. And so that kind of is what was the breaking point where I told Tina, I was like, I got to take a break from doing more. I just got to ride for a while. And she backed off. But eventually we went through Utah and we got into Nevada. And Nevada is the point that you were talking about. Like, why am I doing this? You've seen all those pictures of the straight road in Nevada.
Oh, I've driven those roads.
You've driven those
yes.
roads. I've rode it on a bike. And you'll be sitting at this peak. And you'll be just looking across, and my God, how am I going to get all the way over there? And it's like 20 miles just down, and then 20 miles up. Mm-hmm. And I would get to the up portion, and it would just be wind in my face the entire 20 miles, going up a mountain with wind in my face. And I would just be getting so frustrated and so angry because it was harder than I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. Even though I purposefully made it as hard as I could possibly think to do it, it was harder than I thought it was going to be, so I was getting angry.
Nice.
Yeah, I know.
Isn't it funny how our brain can do those things?
Right. And that's why I had this thought. Cordell posted something on LinkedIn about how you have to detach from emotion, detach from ego, and detach from your perspective. And I thought, what else? You have to detach from your expectations. That's what I didn't do. I did not detach from my expectations. I expected it to be one way, and when it wasn't, I got angry. I got frustrated. And so and I see that so often in just day-to-day life. I'm sure Lucas, when he goes to put his baby down for a nap, he's expecting it to take 15, 20 minutes. I'm going to walk my baby around. The baby's going to fall asleep. I'm going to put the baby down, and it's going to stay asleep. And then I'm going to go get some work done. And then I bet 9 times out of 10, you put the baby down, you start to walk out, the floor creaks, and the baby goes, ah, and it wakes up, and then you're locked.
Yeah,
and then the baby either doesn't go back to sleep at all, or it takes another 40 minutes, and you're sitting there very frustrated, and maybe you're probably a lot more enlightened than I was when I was first had a kid, but
I'm not.
Very frustrated, very angry about that situation. But if you decide beforehand that you're going to detach from your expectations, you're going to go in there and you go, the baby, what's going to happen is going to happen. And regardless of what happens, I'm going to go back, I'm going to put my baby back down, I'm going to console her or him. And if you decide that's what you're going to do before you go in there, if you detach in that way, then when the baby starts crying, you're just going to go over there, you're going to stay calm, and you're going to do it. But if you don't, then you're going to go over there and you're going to be angry, and you're going to feel a little bit of bitterness towards a baby.
Not a little bit. And it's not the floor creaking for us. There's a pocket door that goes between our room and the baby's door.
Yeah, pocket doors. They're so loud.
It's the worst invention on the planet.
They are so loud.
I don't know. My wife can close it and it doesn't make a sound. I touch it and I might as well be like constructing
you have to touch
a
it
whole
in
new
the
building.
perfect way.
Yeah. And I've tried the all right, I'm going to hold it. I've done the Charlie Sheen from Navy SEALs thing, where you put your hand on it, slowly, try to pull and glide and all that. No, it doesn't work. It gets right to the end, and then it's like, and immediate tears and screaming.
So that's why I talk about
put the baby down in the middle of the night.
When people ask me how to detach, we talk about red flags, but I also talk about what I like to call danger areas or danger zones. If I'm with Dave Burke, danger zones, and a red flag is those signals that you see inside your body that tell you that you're about to not be detached, or you aren't detached. But a danger zone would be a situation or an environment that you're going into that you commonly are not detached. So, for example, when you're putting your child down, you always, pretty much every time, that's that's an area where you commonly will lose control. So that's a danger zone.
And us being able to identify those danger zones allow us to take preemptive ownership over things that we might do or say.
Yeah.
I like that, man. I like that a lot. Okay, so
the bike ride, and then so obviously I'm glossing over it a little bit here. But I just rode my bike started riding my bike, and I rode it until I got to San Francisco. Then went down the coast to Camp Pendleton, finished at Camp Pendleton. But the whole time I did it, I just felt unsettled, a little bit angry, a little bit irritable. And at that time, I didn't understand why. I didn't know why I didn't feel fulfilled. Even though I was proud. It was an incredible thing. Raised $126,000 for veteran charities, so I was proud of that.
That's incredible.
Dang.
But the whole time, I just kind of was angry a lot during the second half. Frustrated.
When did you figure out what was causing that, and how did you work through that?
Not until I decided to do the month of marathons.
Okay.
So we can get into that.
Yeah.
And so after the bike ride, I didn't really know what to do with myself. I failed to pre-plan the next move. Mm-hmm. And so it was about 2014. I figured stick with what you're good at and try and make the Paralympics again. Even though the first time you did it, it wasn't particularly fulfilling. And so I wasn't going to do rowing because my rowing partner, Oksana, she had switched sports. She was doing biathlon. Her and Dan know each other. And a paratriathlon was coming into the Paralympics at this point. And so I figured I'll try and do triathlon. But I don't want to do the hand cycle. The category I should have been in was a hand cycle racing wheelchair.
Okay.
But I told myself, no, I can ride a bicycle and I can run using running prostheses. And even though I'm going to be competing against guys that have one fully intact leg, nothing wrong with it, I'm just going to outwork them and I'm going to crush them. And then I did not come anywhere close, even remotely making it to the Paralympics. I got crushed. The only thing I would actually beat them in was running. and the reason for that was because since I'm missing both my legs, my running gait is very efficient. It's symmetrical. So I'm very smooth. I have pretty good running economy. Whereas a single amputee, they're kind of running lopsided all the time, so it takes a lot of energy. They're running normal with one leg and then using a prosthetic on the other side, so it's really lopsided, and it slows them down. Their running economy is a lot lower. So that's the only place where I would crush them. I would destroy. And even though I absolutely failed at triathlon, I rediscovered this natural talent that I had always had for running. I was always the fastest kid in my elementary school class. I was always really good at the PFT, the 3-miler in the Marine Corps with very minimal training. I ended up running the Marine Corps marathon just on a whim.
You probably woke up hungover and decided to go do it.
Not quite. I mean, I didn't get very much sleep the night before, but I was focusing on 5Ks. I really only ran 5Ks, and I figured I'm going to go run the Marine Corps marathon. I got my 5K time was 18 minutes flat, which was better than I had ever done as an able-bodied person. So, I say that just to illustrate that I rediscovered this talent that I had for running.
Sorry, when you ran the Marine Corps marathon, that was as an amputee?
Yeah.
I was thinking you did it when you were in the Marine Corps. That's why I said you woke up hungover.
Oh, yeah.
I had a buddy in the SEAL teams. All the guys were out hanging out, drinking.
Yeah.
It's like 2 a.m. He's like, yeah, I'm running the Marine Corps marathon tomorrow. They're like, bro, it's 2 a.m. We're still drinking. Like, no, you're not. He goes, yeah, I am. They proceeded to go to somebody's house and hang out. He keeps drinking.
Yeah.
Can't drive, so he gets a taxi to the marathon, runs it, and maintains like a 6:30 pace.
It's stories like that make you go, yeah, I know a marathon's hard, but come on, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
Well,
I feel like I could do
If
it.
somebody can do it like that, there's people that run the London Marathon. They try and set the record for running a marathon with a washing machine on your back. There's people that do it like that and just make a joke out of a marathon. You're like, yeah, it's hard, but it's not that hard if you really think about it.
It's just crazy. But, I mean, you just are like, I haven't trained for it. I'm a double above the knee amputee, and you just go run the Marine Corps marathon. That's incredible.
Yeah, I just decided I was going to do it. I think the longest run I did was 90 minutes. And it took me about 4 hours and 15 minutes, and my body was basically locked. The last mile, I'd be running, and I would be running like this, and my bicep would lock. And I would go, ah! And I would straighten it, and my tricep would lock, and I'd go, ah! And then I have to bend my arm again. Like, my entire body was just locking up in my abs would then lock, and like, ah! So I was in bad shape by the end of it, but, I finished. I was walking a lot. But rediscovering that talent, running the Marine Corps marathon, it showed me that I was good at running naturally.
Okay.
And then after I failed triathlon again, I was in a position where I didn't know what to do. Like, what do I do with myself? And there was this guy named the Iron Cowboy.
Oh yeah.
You know him? So 50 Ironmans, 50 states, 50 days. You what?
I know of him.
You know of him? Yeah. And so he was doing that while I was training for triathlon. So I followed him for a while. And I was out on my bike, kind of riding around forlornly after I quit. I quit on triathlon. I pulled out, but before the absolute last day, so that qualifies as quitting. And because I saw there was no path.
Yeah.
And so it was the right time to quit. It's one of those situations where it was a good place to quit.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a good retreat.
Yeah, it was and I didn't retreat. I attacked in another direction, but that's, we'll ignore your little comment. You know about the Chosin Reservoir, right?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, when you're done with World War II, read about Chosin Reservoir.
All right, I'm writing it down.
And that's what the Marines were saying. They were like, the Marines retreated. And the Marines were like, no, we're attacking in another direction.
we might have just had to go backwards and around.
We attacked in another direction because we were technically surrounded, so we didn't retreat. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I heard about the Iron Cowboy, and I was on my bike ride thinking about what I wanted to do next, and I had this epiphany that the reason that the bike ride wasn't fulfilling to me is because it was about me. Mm. It was about seeing what I could do, seeing what I was capable of. And at this same time, I had realized what you're talking about in the introduction, that this perception of veterans had been shifting from the noble hero to the broken hero, and I didn't like that because it didn't represent me at all.
Yeah.
And there was just so many, like every news story, every movie, every TV show, every book, every song is about every veteran character, and all those things is about how we're all haunted and we're all constantly on the cusp of implosion. Like every I can't think of a movie where there's a veteran that's a normal person, that's just a regular guy walking around, not staring into the distance for 1,000 meters.
Yep.
And while I recognize that that is something that happens, it's a real thing. It's important for us to be aware of that. It doesn't represent the vast majority of veterans. The vast majority of veterans go to war, they come back, and they process it. And do they have some memories? Sure, but they're not sitting there being haunted all the time.
Yeah.
And it bothered me that was the perception. That was the most common perception, was that veterans are constantly on the cusp of implosion.
There's also veterans that will be haunted when they're really not, because they know that they can get attention.
And that's the problem.
Yes.
It's when there's a perception. Not only do people then start to take advantage of that,
Yep.
there's, and I don't necessarily believe in a completely, brain-free situation where people don't have the control of whether or not they struggle, or I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what I'm trying to say here, but when you create that perception, people can there's probably a case where people can tend to create that for themselves.
Yes, absolutely.
Create that in themselves.
Yep.
Create that, I don't want to say victimhood mentality, but that kind of...
No, you're right.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's, we're not saying it technically correct for whatever the medical terminology would be, but I think the premise of what you and I are trying to say is there are people that will see the benefits of being a victim, therefore they make themselves a victim.
Or it's just an expectation. This is what's going to happen, so this is what I'm going to do, and they're not necessarily trying to take advantage of anything, but that's just what's expected of them.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go ahead and step into that role.
Yeah.
And that bothered me because I didn't want to see that happen to veterans.
Yeah.
And so that let me know that, and this is all a retrospective, but that caused me to see that what I needed to do in order to be fulfilled in my life was lead. Mm-hmm. And I had to be a leader. I had to step into this role of taking ownership of this problem that I saw in my community, and I had to do something about it. And the way that I had to do something about it was the other thing that I really liked doing, which was pushing myself to the limits physically. And so I took that plus that, that thing that I like to do, plus the fact that I just rediscovered this natural talent for running, plus I had been following the Iron Cowboy, I'm going to run a bunch of marathons back to back. I didn't know how many at the time, so then I went home and I called I didn't talk about how I met my wife, Pam, at the Paralympics 2012. We were just dating at the time. She was living in England, so I called her on Skype and we talked about it. And I said that that's what I wanted to do. And she said, you could probably do it, but obviously I'm worried about what this is going to do to you. That sounds like it's going to be incredibly challenging. And when you're right, so I should probably take a couple years to train. And then kind of lost my train of thought, but I started thinking about, okay, how many marathons should I run?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, all right, 22 is the magic number that everybody's kind of aware of. 22 suicides a day, supposedly. But I figured that's not enough marathons in a row. Yeah. It's too short. It's not hard enough to really get momentum going. And then I figured, what if I was like Iron Cowboy? I did 50. I did 50 marathons in 50 days. And then I sat back and I thought, well, that's probably too many because people aren't going to pay attention for that long. I didn't even pay attention to the Iron Cowboy for 50 days. And I was interested in it. Yeah. By the day 50, I went, oh, shoot, is he still doing that? No. So I figured 50 is too many because people are going to stop paying attention. Yeah. People can probably pay attention for a whole month. Yeah. So I figured, all right, I'll do a month of marathons. Longest month is 31 days, so I'm going to do 31 back-to-back. And then where do I do them? I just wanted to get as many eyeballs on this story as possible. So I figured I'll do my marathons in the most populous cities. So I picked 31 of the most populous cities that were all drivable.
That's awesome.
And then started them out and then started training.
Yeah, you did one in San Diego running down in Coronado past Bloods, correct?
Yeah. With Helen. Helen came.
Yeah.
Jocko kind of chickened out. That's okay. No big deal, Jocko.
So this is St. Helen. This is Mrs. Willink.
This is Helen Willink. She was there crushing it with us.
That's awesome.
She was awesome. And then, the video I play at Muster, it was kind of fun because I was running on Silver Strand Trail. Up and down. I was based at Hotel Del Coronado, and we were running out and backs, and I kept crossing paths with this Buds platoon. And then eventually one time we ran by, and we just hear this, Rob Jones! And then the rest of the platoon was like, "Hoo-yah, Rob Jones!"
Yeah, the Buds class.
And I did, the Buds class. Yeah, I didn't know exactly. I didn't know what the tradition was for that, but it was really cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I asked Jocko and Leif about it. It's the fact that they didn't get destroyed for doing that. They said was probably amazing. Maybe they did get destroyed for it. They did it anyway.
They might have. I don't think they did.
Yeah,
So you don't just throw out those hoo-yahs.
You usually do it for Buds instructors. Yeah,
or like if you'll see if you're I believe if my memory serves me correctly, like when I was going through Buds, the senior class to us was class 241. So if you saw them, you'd be like, you're going to hoo-yah class 241 as a sign of respect. You would do it to the instructors. Captain Smithers was the commanding officer of Buds. He actually just passed away this last week.
Yeah.
So it's like people of significance, and so that's really cool that they did that for you.
Yeah, so I was really honored when I actually found out about I thought it was the instructor that had yelled it out, because that's what you would do in boot camp.
Class leader, yeah.
That's what you do in boot camp. The instructor would yell. They'd always be with you, and they would tell you what to yell. You wouldn't decide to yell for yourself.
Now, it might have been prompted by an instructor for them to understand who you were.
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact that the class did it is
the fact they even knew who I was.
Cool.
I think maybe Pam ran into the instructor or something. They asked.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I think that might have been what happened, and so then maybe the instructor told them or whatever, but I don't know.
Either way, it's
awesome.
It's
an honor.
You got a hoo-yah from a Buds class.
Got a hoo-yah from a Buds class. So if anybody in that Buds class remembers that, reach out to Lucas.
Yes.
And tell us your story. Tell us your memories.
Yeah. Tell us how that memory alone made it to where you.
And the joke I like to tell at Muster is that's the only ever Buds class that graduated with 100% graduation. So
from that moment on.
The only time.
No doubt.
They should have done it day one. We would have had a lot more seals.
I
Thanks
know,
a lot, Rob.
Probably a lot more bad seals. You'd have a lot of weak seals.
Dude, your wife has been an instrumental part to your success from the moment you met her till current day.
Definitely.
She helped guide you on this endeavor of 31 marathons in 31 days.
Impossible without her.
Yeah. And
she ran the show.
Family. Bring us back to when you guys met, and then bring this up to like current day, like with your family and Echelon Front.
Yeah. So we didn't talk about the Paralympics, but just to go over it briefly, I learned how to row in therapy, and it was kind of a driving thing for me to do that. I do the Paralympics coming up in 2012. I became interested in them as something that I could do. Started training, found a rowing partner, Oksana Masters, look her up. She's got 27 Paralympic medals. She's been in like 8 straight Paralympics. She's in Paris right now as we speak, probably winning another gold medal. So she's incredible. So we rowed together, won a bronze medal in the Paralympics, and then after the Paralympics, we were all out partying, celebrating. Yeah. Just so happened. Let me take a step back. So the first day that we got to the rowing lake, me and Oksana, our boatman was setting up our boat, so we took a walk down the race course to check things out. We're looking at the other teams. We were sitting by the side of the lake, and this 4, which is a boat with 4 people in it, goes by, and I saw this gorgeous, blonde, bronzed, hot rowing chick in the bow of one of the boats, and I just went, damn. She's hot. Yeah. She was from Great Britain, but I was still in competition mode, so locked it back in. Just walked around with a constant scowl on my face, beard, high and tight, trying to look tough, trying to intimidate everybody.
I know that game.
Yep, yeah, exactly. win the bronze medal. Go out partying. British contingent shows up to this bar that we were in. We're there. We somehow joined forces, probably because we're the only 2 groups that speak English, and everybody was drunk. I wasn't drunk. I was still kind of grumpy because we got bronze. I wanted gold. I was not super happy about bronze.
Yeah.
And I was also a little bit guarded because this is the only time I'd ever left America besides my deployment. So I was kind of a little bit on guard. Luckily, the British boat was very drunk and they started forcing beers upon me. So I drank enough Foster's beers. I loosened up, hit it off with Pam. We became Facebook friends. And I was actually set to go home the day before my birthday, the 6th, in 2 days. And I met up with her a couple times, and she said, "When are you going home?" And I said, "I'm going home tomorrow, you know." She said, "No, you got to stay the rest of the Paralympics. You can stay another week. You should stay here. We can hang out." And I was like, no, I'll probably head home. And then I got back, and I sat there, and I was like, you know what? Opened up my flight on United. This is before I had a smartphone. I had just a regular flip phone or something. And I kept trying to change my flight, and I couldn't figure it out. So I was like, screw it. I just bought a whole new flight. I think it cost $2,000 one way from England to DC.
Yeah.
It was like $2,000. Plunked it down, stayed. I just didn't get on that other flight. I guess they just, they were fine.
Still looking for you.
They're still looking for Rob Jones.
For someone who travels this as much as we do now, like this gives me anxiety hearing that. The fact that you did not switch your flight.
But this is back in 2012, not a smartphone.
Yeah, he's on his Motorola Razr.
Yeah, I just didn't care. I didn't know what to do.
It's his choice that he didn't have a smartphone.
Yeah.
By the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the iPhone was out at that point.
Oh, it for sure was
out for a while.
Not that matters.
I purposely did not want an iPhone at that point.
Still don't.
I don't know why. Anyway. Yeah, still don't want an iPhone. I actually had one for a while. Anyway.
Yeah, Rob is the only person in the Echelon Front instructor chat that has an Android and it screws it up for everybody.
And every time I text into the group and somebody complains about it, I get one of those Grinch smiles.
Yeah.
And I go
saying,
like this.
Andrew Paul, what did he do? Oh, he bought an iPhone.
Andrew Paul had an iPhone.
He still does.
He has 2 phones now.
One
is just for the instructor chat.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he's a team player, Rob. And you know what Tara did? Who was Dave Burke's executive assistant at Echelon Front.
Yeah.
You know what she had when she first showed up?
She had an Android.
An Android. You know what she quickly did?
She had.
You know what she quickly did?
Well, I understand she had a mysterious iPhone just appear at her door.
Rob Jones, you know what she quickly did? She switched over to iPhone.
She switched.
I'll buy you an iPhone.
I got a spare at the house.
No. I will buy you an iPhone if you completely switch over.
I've had an iPhone. I like the Android. And look, the RCS thing.
Stop.
Apple's fixing it. They're good. They're joining forces. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. Very soon.
It's the computer programmer in him.
This interview is over.
Let's go back to you meeting your hot
You're
wife.
gonna have a great YouTube video. JP storms out in capital letters. YouTube.
If he would have finished
Navy
his computer
SEAL
science degree, he would have gotten an iPhone.
Yeah,
he would have been smart
This
enough.
is the part of him that likes rocks. That
What's
has got the Android.
the YouTube video?
Rocks.
Navy SEAL
Comfort me.
storms out on U.S. Marine, all in capital
But
letters.
we have to add
That's gonna
the
be
fact that
so
you're a
good.
double amputee.
Yeah. Navy SEAL storms out against
DV US.
disabled veteran attacks, whatever. Anyway,
Okay, so going back to
so we hit it off. I bought
puppy
that
love
flight,
costing you $2,000.
but she still lived in England.
Puppy love is real.
So
to
we
puppies.
stayed, and then she told me that her sister kind of got her into rowing, and so by the way, Pam won gold at the Paralympics.
That's awesome.
And then she won 4 world championships and another gold in 2016. By the way.
Dude, you outkicked your coverage.
Oh yeah. Totally.
We all did.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's incredible.
I admit it. I admit that. And so she told me that she wanted to thank her sister by taking her on a trip to New York. And I went, "Oh, really? Well, I guess I could probably come up and meet you or something, and I'd maybe show you around DC, if you're interested in doing that." And so she did. She stayed. I met her in New York. Talked to her sister. Her sister made sure I was good. Sister headed home, and then Pam and I went down to DC and we hung out for a couple weeks.
Oh.
She went home. A couple weeks later, she's had the opportunity to do her own training for a while. And she said, why don't I come back over to America and I'll stay for maybe 3 months? And I said, well, that sounds great to me. So why don't you come over? And we lived together for 3 months while in Charlottesville. I was training for rowing. She was training for rowing. We were together for 3 months, and then she had to go back home again. We kind of left it where we weren't going to be dating because, it's a big commitment to long distance for 4 years.
Yeah.
Transatlantic long distance. And then a few months went by. I kept, still thinking about her. We still talk all the time, and eventually I went back over there, and I had decided we were going to meet up again for another week. I decided I'm going to ask her for another shot. Chickened out. Didn't do it, and then I think a couple weeks later I finally got the guts to ask her over Skype. Lame, but and then we started dating, and then we did 4 years of long distance.
Wow!
And then she moved over in 2017. Wow! The day she came over to live here, we had to go get married within 90 days because she was coming over on a fiancé visa. We went to Vegas, got married in Vegas. We didn't do an Elvis, and I'll tell you why, because Elvis is so commercialized now.
Oh.
You want an Elvis at your wedding, it costs you $400 or $300. So we just found a guy on Craigslist, I dressed up as Uncle Sam, she dressed up as Statue of Liberty.
Nice.
And then her friend came along dressed up as Wonder Woman, and we went up in the high roller, and this guy married us.
That's awesome.
And then we partied in Las Vegas for a couple of days, went home, and then we did a formal wedding the next year.
That's cool.
And now we've got, she's a farmer.
Yep.
We live in a house that was built for us by Tunnel to Towers Foundation.
That's an awesome foundation.
Yep, they're awesome. They're amazing. I do their tower climb every year.
Mm-hmm.
They do that awesome 5K in New York, the 9/11 5K. And then we've got a son named Harry. He's 4. He's awesome. And we got a baby named Pepper who's 8 months. She's awesome. And Pam's a farmer, and she's crushing it on the farm.
And you help out with the farming
in
between your Echelon Front travel?
Yeah, a little bit. I still was kind of a little bit salty about my farming growing up. So I told her when she told me she wanted to be a farmer, we can do it. I don't want to be doing any daily chores. I'm not doing daily farming. And she said, that's fine.
Bro, we need to work through those issues you've been holding on to, my man.
I don't want to be a farmer. That's what I told her. And she said, that's fine. But I said, I'm still going to help you, obviously, when you need me to do stuff. And the first thing I helped her out was I built a deer fence, an 8-foot tall deer fence around their garden area. I helped her. I, kind of was lead on building that. And if she needs me to go check on the sheep or she needs me to drive the tractor, I help out all the time. We have 13 acres, so I do a lot of stuff.
Wow, that's awesome.
But I'm not doing, day-to-day farming stuff.
Yeah.
Is what
You're
I'm
not cleaning the barn.
No, I'm not cleaning anything. I'm not harvesting vegetables. I'm not planting anything. I do basically manual labor. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of general farm knowledge.
Yeah.
And then that she has access to. And so if she needs me to fix something, I could fix it.
Do you charge her a consulting fee as the general farm knowledge guy?
She just has to give me back rubs,
That's cool.
That's my fee. Back rub.
That's a solid fee.
Yeah, that's worth it, man.
Yeah.
And then so after... So then getting into how I became an Echelon Front instructor, after the month of marathons, I got contacted by a speakers bureau saying, we think you should be a speaker for us. And I went, sounds good. I dabbled in it a little bit. I wasn't that good at it. I dabbled a little bit. And then they said, you should speak for us. And then I got a couple people that contacted me asking me to do speeches for them. So it kind of became... a natural thing for me to do. I tried to come up with a story and everything to talk about. Didn't have a whole lot of lessons. Well, I came up with some lessons, was, and then in early 2018, I'd been on Jocko. I had his number, and I texted him. Just for advice, I said, do you, when you do your speaking, do you use a speakers bureau or anything? And he said, no, I have a company called Echelon Front, and they book everything. I was like, okay.
I wrote a book. People come to me.
People come to me, yeah. And he said, maybe you should join us. And I went, sounds awesome. And then he called me one time, and he was trying to figure out, I think in 2018, it was him, Leif, you, and Dave. That was it, right? Yep. You were the only instructors. And so he said at that point they weren't exactly sure how to bring people in.
And Flynn was there at the time.
And Flynn.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I think I came on maybe before, because was Flynn in Ramadi?
No.
Yeah, so I think maybe it was late 2017 or something, but I think at that point he said they weren't exactly sure how they were going to start bringing in instructors that hadn't been in Ramadi, because back then that was kind of a heavy part of the of the brief.
Heavy part of the brief, and also a heavy requested ask. Like people really wanted to talk about Ramadi, to tie it into business, and somebody that had been in Ramadi.
Yeah.
Initially, that's how it used to be.
Yeah, and so what I didn't do at that point was take ownership of figuring out how that could be, how I could do my story, and I should have done that, and then called Jocko and said, this is how it could look. That's what I should have done.
Yeah, here's your principles, here's my story, here's the overlap.
Yeah, but instead I just went, oh, okay, that's cool, and then I just started doing regular motivational speaking.
That's cool.
And I can't. Yeah, the motivational speech I give it's good. It's a long story.
Yeah.
It's a good story. Don't get me wrong, but what we do at Echelon Front is 50 million times better. To be perfectly honest with you, and so, and I kind of was making a little bit of a living with it, and I was getting probably 5 or 6 speeches a year or something, not that much.
Yeah.
And COVID wiped it out. I think one year, the COVID year, I made $1,000 or something like that doing speaking, and so I didn't do well. And then Jason invited me to go. I had met Jason, I had met Steve, I had met Dave, Leif. I came to the Arlington.
Yeah.
I met you.
Yeah.
I met everybody.
I have a video of you at the DC muster working out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I did the workout and everything. So I met a lot of the instructors then, and Jason eventually asked me if he was coming to Gettysburg for Battlefield, and he said, "Do you want to come?" And he came out and saw our farm, and we went over and we saw Jordan Green's farm, and he had invited us to the next year. He invited us to go to Battlefield, and I went, and the only stuff that I had to really talk about at Battlefield in terms of work and that kind of thing was my struggles to get going in the motivational speaking realm, and just about how and Leif, he asked me, how do you get gigs? And I just have a speakers bureau, but honestly they don't do much, and so I'm starting to take ownership, and I had a great year when wow, shocking. When I started taking ownership of getting myself my own gigs, I had a great year. Wow, amazing. And then and then Leif said, why don't you just come out and check out what we're doing over here? And I went, oh, well, if you're going to, twist my arm and offer me the dream job, yes, I'll come and check out what you guys are doing over there. And then so I just started to. Leif set me up with Katie, and then got me kind of into the system, and I forget who. I think Jen started finding gigs for me to go join Leif, and I went out with Cody on one, Sean on one.
You, Danny, and I.
Yeah. That was early on.
Yeah.
And you let me talk, and slowly over time, I started learning the ropes, and I got more and more opportunities to speak, and did the whole process of briefing you, and I briefed Dave, and I briefed Jamie, and I briefed never briefed Jocko. Never had to brief Jocko.
That's cool.
I had to brief him my muster brief.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Am I a legitimate instructor? I don't know. I briefed all those guys. Steve became my mentor.
Yeah.
And I went on a lot of events with Steve, and so slowly and surely got me to a point where I was able to start doing my own events and everything, and here we are.
It's been an awesome journey that you've been a part of, man.
And I'm incredibly grateful and incredibly lucky that all these things kind of came together. I didn't set out to start doing this kind of thing when I ran the month of marathons. I just set out to create that story, and if I hadn't have done it, wouldn't have been on Jocko, wouldn't be where I am today.
It's cool to see the way God connects things, man. And
I hadn't stepped on the IED, wouldn't have my family.
That's what's crazy. And one of the things that I have heard you say many times is knowing what you know now and where your life is at. You said you wouldn't change one thing.
I'd do it again.
Yeah.
I told my wife on our wedding vows I'd do it 1,000 times. And I mean that. I would do it all over again as many times as I had to end up here.
That's amazing.
doing what we get to do and with my family. So
You have an incredible family. Your wife is awesome. Your kids are awesome. I love your son at the musters when he's just, that energy.
him and Jocko are buddies, man.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Pam. She's an amazing woman.
And like I said, she ran the entire month of marathons. It's not happening unless she runs the whole show.
Yeah.
She was driving 10, 12 hours through Texas trying to stay awake so she could get me to San Antonio at 5 a.m. so I could start running.
Wow.
So that's just one thing that she was able to do.
She's an incredible human.
Yeah.
So, well, I think it's probably a good time for us to kind of wrap this up. I'll ask you to close it out with some final thoughts, but I'm going to share some things before we get there.
Yeah, totally. You've been writing stuff down, so.
Yeah. Do you have any final questions? I know we have a lot.
Yeah, I got a couple of things, but I'll keep mine brief because I know we're wanting to get to some barbecue.
Yeah, and the memoir is going to come out, so we'll do another one.
Yeah, well, that's what I had planned on. Is this? Yeah. Let's open the door to who Rob Jones is.
Yeah,
and then when that comes out, we're 100% going to review it back on here. And, you know,
I'm stoked for that. I love a good book.
Going deep into the nitty gritty.
So favorite game and game system? You said you were a gamer in college. What's your favorite game and game system? Okay.
Yeah, I didn't do consoles. I did PC.
Right on.
When I was in college, I wasted all of my time playing Half-Life mods. Natural Selection, Counter-Strike, games like that. First-person shooters a lot.
Yeah.
But that's probably how I spent the vast majority of my time in college playing for Unreal Tournament.
Counter-Strike was so good. So was Unreal Tournament.
Unreal Tournament was my favorite. I was the best at that.
Yeah.
So I just played video games all the time. And racquetball. Video games and racquetball. That's what I wasted my time doing.
Really? Racquetball.
Racquetball's fun.
Racquetball is fun.
Legit.
What is the smart bell, and when are we going to get to see that?
What is the smart bell? Well, there's the dumbbell.
Okay.
We all know what a dumbbell is.
Yes.
And that's a project that I gave to Jonathan Montgomery. He's going to create that. I gave him ownership of it. And I'm just waiting for Jonathan Montgomery to figure out what it is. I came up with a name. That's 90% of the work.
Right.
He now has ownership.
Now he's got to figure out what it is.
I gave Jonathan Montgomery ownership, so you're going to have to ask him about what the smart bell is.
All right.
But I just figured it was a smart dumbbell. I don't know what that means. We have smart cars, we have smartphones, we have smart TVs, smart everything.
Yeah.
Why don't we have a smart dumbbell?
Maybe you can use your astrophysics degree, and it can be one that like changes the gravity on its own based off how much resistance you need.
I don't know.
That's not realistic. However, you should have given me that ownership because I have some ideas for smart bells. I'll just call it something else though.
Oh, well, let's hear your ideas.
Oh, no, you're gonna workshop it with Michael so he can help you come up with new names.
So you're gonna come up with a competing bell, a smarter bell. Is what you should call it.
You'll know when it's on the market.
You should preempt the smart bell and call it the smarter bell.
You could work with Leif's wife and develop one specifically for women for the smart her bell.
Smart her bell.
Smarter news.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay.
There we go.
Right.
Smarter fit.
Just tying in the whole ecosystem.
JP and I just became enemies.
Well, I'm glad I was here for it.
Enemies until further notice.
That's one of the things you used to tell other instructors. If it was like him and Danny kind of figuring out who was going to be like picked on the gig.
They'll send us a proposal. It's like instructors offered, like Danny, Rob, JP, Sean. And I would text everybody and be like, we're enemies until this gets determined.
That's the best way to do it.
You'll have to tell me. I send a lot of dumb stuff to the cadre group. You'll have to tell me if I ever get to a point where it's too much.
I would text you separately.
Yeah.
I would
do that.
Either I'm going to give like subtle hints in there, or I'm just going to text you like, hey, bud.
Hey,
maybe we start one without Jocko and Leif.
And then finally, just an apology for the dodecahedron.
Well, that was a joke.
Not as well.
Oh, you're apologizing to me. Oh, okay, yeah.
For putting.
Yeah, apology accepted. Yep. It was kind of late notice.
Could have ended in a dentist appointment before barbecue if I wasn't careful.
Nice.
There you go.
That's why I took the iterative step.
That's good.
Of a light bite.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I got feedback.
Yep.
That there was something really hard in that cookie, so I took it out. And I put that down. It turns out there was a dice in there.
Yeah.
A die.
Yeah. There you go.
I was watching a video yesterday. I was dying laughing. And this guy, he's in a bar, and this biker dude comes up to him, takes his drink, and drinks it. And the guy was just like, he's like, starts crying. He's like, I can't do anything right. I'm phrasing what he said. He's like, something happened at work and I got fired. And then, I was driving and my vehicle broke down and I couldn't change it out. And by the time I got home, my wife had another guy there and now she's leaving me. And he's like, listing off all these things. And the guy was just like, oh man, he like gets like close to the guy, like he feels bad. And he goes, and then I came here and I wanted to drink this glass of poison to kill myself. And then you took it from me and drank it. And the guy was like, what? And then the guy was like, what are you talking about? So anyways, when that happened earlier, it prompted that video. All right. So just want to thank all of you guys for sticking with us. I know this has been a longer episode, but I hope you have been taking notes and or just paying attention to this episode with Rob. Just the feedback that we get from this podcast, it makes it worth it. The time here, just us being able to facilitate having guests here and just all the work that Lucas does to produce this podcast. I'm very appreciative of Lucas and also the guests that we have because of the value. I know that I now have more information, and if I choose to apply this information from Rob's episode, I can be a better husband, I can be a better father, and I can be a better leader and human. So Rob, I just want to say thank you. And I want to thank all of our listeners that make this podcast happen by sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Make sure you guys are subscribed to us on YouTube so you can be notified when our YouTube exclusive episodes come out. If you want to follow us on social media, I am at JP Dinnell, 2 N's, 2 L's. Lucas is at Lucas Pinkard, Lucaspinkard, and Rob is at Rob Jones Journey. Again, that's at Rob Jones Journey. Make sure you're also following us at Echelon Front on social media. We are at Echelon Front. You can also go to our website, which is echelonfront.com, to check out and see what we have going on, what future events we have going on. And if you want to have Rob come out and work with your company, go to echelonfront.com and you can book one of our instructors to come work with your company. If you also want to check out at Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu _USA, it's a ministry that I'm a part of. There's also a podcast that comes out every Tuesday. We have live events about every 4 to 6 weeks at different gyms. We start off with a free Jiu-Jitsu seminar. Someone shares their testimony, and then we open it up for some open mat and awesome training. We also have merchandise. If you go to our website, shirts, rash guards, coffee.
Yep. It's pretty good coffee, too.
Coffee's pretty good. I like it. Also a partner of a Texas beef company called Little Cattle Co. My best friend. Beef. Yeah, dog. My best friend Stephen Little started that company with him and his wife in 2017. Our website is littlecattle.co. My wife and I joined with Stephen and Amanda the other year, and we're helping grow the company. It's been really cool to see what Stephen and Amanda have been doing with that company, and I'm excited because recently we have the beef sticks that just came out. We have the beef tallow products. We're a custom order beef company, which means that allows you to order exactly what you want each time based off the needs of your family, your friends, or whatever you want. We also have a ground beef subscription that's pretty popular. The feedback that we've been getting from just the quality of our beef, the beef tallow products, the aftercare skin products, the lip balm, the beef sticks. It's awesome to see how the company's been growing and expanding, and major shout out to Stephen and his wife Amanda Little, and especially Amanda Little has stepped in and just been running that company. Stephen has had to shift his focus to some other business career things, which has been awesome, and his wife Amanda has really stepped into that role, and it's really cool. Stephen and I were talking about it the other day, just seeing our wives thrive and doing things that they love, that they're really good at. And it's just awesome that I get to be a part of that company. If you want to be a wholesaler for our beef sticks and or the beef tallow products, send an email to amanda@littlecattle.co. We've actually been having companies reach out and ask about that. So amanda@littlecattle.co if you want to be a wholesaler for the beef sticks and or beef tallow products. Also partner with a printing company called On the Path Printing. Josh Strasberger and I started that company. Reach out to us on Instagram. It's at On the Path Printing. Just send us a message there. Let us know what you have going on, and we will let you know if we can help fulfill those apparel printing needs. Also, check out Bruiser Arms. It's a company Leif, Jocko, and I are a part of. You can check us out on Instagram. It's at Bruiser Arms. We are a training company and a gear company, so we have different training opportunities and different gear options as well, send us a message and we can, just set up a call with you to see what you need and what we can help facilitate. Also go to originusa.com and jockofuel.com to check out the gear and the products and the supplements that those companies have. Origin and Jocko Fuel have been supporting me and my family and what I'm a part of since 2017 when I first met them. It's pretty incredible when you really see and just understand what Peter and Amanda Roberts have done, from the fact of cutting down trees on their property to build a factory to bring manufacturing back to America. So go to originusa.com to check out some of the absolute best American-made gear. Started off with Jiu-Jitsu gis and rash guards, and now they have jeans and regular pants and hunting pants and everyday activewear pants,
jean
and t-shirts and hoodies. The jean jacket just launched. I don't know. By the time this comes out, I don't know if there will be any left. They did a limited run.
They'll have to do another one.
The boots are insane. The new mock toe boot that I was able to get when I was at immersion camp, it's just unreal. So go check it out. Rob, what do you got, bud, as we close it out? Thank you again for taking up so much of your time to be here, traveling. You've got an event with Dave Burke tomorrow, which means that you're going to go meet up with Dave Burke tonight. You guys are going to review your stuff. You're going to be prepping, and you took over 3 hours to come and sit and talk and share lessons with us. So I just want to say thank you very much, my man.
Yeah, no, well, first off, I think that it'd be a good idea just for me to quickly talk about what me and Cody are doing.
Oh.
In November?
Yeah.
Just really quickly. I'm not going to take a ton of time on it. But Cody Gandy came to me not too long ago, and he said, I have an idea. And I said, what's the idea? And he said, I need you to run a marathon. I said, no. I'm retired. I swore I'd never run another marathon, Cody. And he said, I need you to come out of retirement for one last marathon. I said, if it was for anybody else, I wouldn't do it. But since you're a brother, your fellow Echelon Front instructor, I'll do it.
And did he give you like the secret Marine Corps handshake?
It's
more
like
about it. Okay.
It's more like a nod.
Got it. Okay.
No, he came to me with an idea. He said he wanted to run a marathon to raise awareness and raise some money for first responders and for veterans, and he obviously knew I am all about that. So we are going to partner together, and we're going to be running a marathon in November. Echelon Front is, I guess it would be called, hosting a virtual run. There's going to be multiple distances, I think, from 5K, 10K, half marathon, full marathons. It's a virtual run, so you just go on the website. I don't think the website's up yet, but it's probably going to be at echelonfront.com somewhere. And you're going to sign up for the virtual run. You're going to get a T-shirt. You're going to get some gear. I think it's $50 to sign up. And Cody and I, we're going to run it November either 23rd or 24th. We're going to run it together. I think Cody's going to be running with a weighted vest on. I don't know how heavy. I'll be running it skinny with my prosthetics on. We're going to run it together. And if you want to run it with us, you can run it on one of those days, but you can really run it anytime that you want. And it's going to be raising money and raising awareness about first responders and veterans. It's going to be kind of, for me, continuing that same mission that I've always been on since 2017 with the month of marathons. And it's going to be allowing us to give back to all those people that serve us and serve our country. And it's called To Honor Those. That's the name of the run.
Nice. I like it. And I believe you said they also, with that $50, they get a T-shirt.
Yeah, they get a really cool T-shirt. There are some videos out there of me wearing it. I think Cody wearing it. Yeah. We're going to do an official announcement here soon.
Yeah.
So you can see the T-shirt on our chiseled torsos, and just imagine how it's going to look on you.
Yeah.
And then, it's going to be awesome, and we're gonna run it together. I think, if he agrees, I think we're going to end up finishing at the Iwo Jima Memorial. That's my proposal.
Wow.
And I'm pretty sure Cody's going to be on board with that. If he's not, then I might strip him of Marine status. But after that announcement, I just want to thank. I have people to thank too. Thank you, not only for giving me the honor of being, episode 50 I know not everybody gets to come on this podcast. There's probably a lot of people that would love to be in this chair. So thank you guys both. Thank you personally, JP, for helping me out as I became an instructor, being a mentor to me, being a guide for me. I know I can, if I ever have a question or something I want to talk about, you're always going to answer the phone.
Absolutely.
And just everything that we talked about today, I'm the focal point. You know, I'm the guy that's sitting here in the chair. But just like we talked about with Pam, there are dozens of people that helped me do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And none of the story that we heard. I'm not in this chair right now without all those people. And there's too many to name. Therapists, doctors, parents, friends, Marines, you know, my family. There's just too many people to name them all individually, but all of them contributed and got me to here, to where I am today. And like I said, it's not going to happen without all those people. And all the stuff in the future isn't going to happen. You know, I thank my 4-year-old son and my daughter as well, and Pam again for giving me the job, you know, of being a dad and being a husband and trying to be what they need me to be so that they can live the best lives that they can live, and being a leader of the family. And I pinch myself how lucky I am to have them as a family, and I pinch myself constantly that I get to be an instructor at Echelon Front.
Yeah.
Talk about people wanting to join a team.
Yeah.
You know, there's millions of people that would want to be in this position, and so I pinch myself all the time. I can't even believe this is happening.
It's pretty rad.
And so I'm sure you feel the same way, and all the instructors do too. So I'm just thankful for all the people that got me to this point.
Well, I know that I can say this on behalf of Jocko, Leif, Dave, Jamie, and the whole Echelon Front team. We're honored to have you on the team, brother. We're very thankful. We, as you said, truly have the best opportunity out there, and we all know that you don't take it for granted. We know that you honor your teammates, you honor this nation by what you do every single day. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your service, everything that you did for this nation, everything that you currently are doing for this nation, and that you will, and also for the world in general, because of what we get to do through Echelon Front. So as we close it out, I just want to say thank you once again, Rob. Thank you, Pam, for your support in this amazing man. And I hope this episode has been a reminder for all of us out there to go out there, do the work, and to never settle. This has been the JP Dinnell Podcast, episode 50.